Well, good morning, councillors and staff and all those that are joining us via live stream. Welcome to this ordinary meeting of the Sunshine Coast Council. And on behalf of Council, I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the local government area of the Sunshine Coast, and they, of course, are the Kabi people of the coastal plains and northern hinterland and the Jinnaburra people of the southern hinterland. And I'd like to pay on behalf of Council our respects to Elders past, present and emerging of all First Nations people. I'd now ask the Chamber to be upstanding for the opening prayer, please. And again, for COVID-19 reasons, we don't have a member of the Ministers Fraternal here today, but Pastor Rod Job of the Church on the Rise from Maloney has provided today's prayer, which I'll read. Today we look to you, our God, as Council meets in session. We look to your wisdom and strength for strategies and direction for the Sunshine Coast. We pray for your favour and blessing on this region, for families, businesses, schools and workplaces. We pray for those who are struggling in this COVID-19 crisis time with mental health issues and fear of what the future may bring. Grant them your peace as we pray. You are a light in the darkness, a promise keeper. You are a way maker in times of challenge. We pray for your guidance in the matters at hand today and ask that you would give Council the outcomes that bring prosperity and peace to our region. To God be the glory. Amen. Thank you, Pastor Job. Thank you. Please be seated. The record of attendance today, we have no apologies from councillors, but we have two executives acting. Chris Allen is acting Group Executive in the Livability and Natural Assets area, and Michael Costello as acting Group Executive for Business Performance. The minutes of the last three meetings, being the special meeting on the 22nd of June, the special meeting which was budget adoption, and the ordinary meeting held on the 25th of June have been received. Can I have someone move the receipt, please? Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Seconded, Councillor Babarowski. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Councillors, I'd also like to draw to your attention that on the 21st of May 2018, amendments to the Local Government Act 2009 came into force. These amendments include the new Division 5A, which provides new legislative arrangements for dealing with councillors' personal interests in local government matters. These arrangements will apply to how we manage such matters at today's meeting, and should you have a material personal interest or a conflict or perceived conflict of interest, please raise that prior to the item we'll be dealing with. There are no mayoral minutes. We do need a procedural motion, and that is that in the interests of the safety and health of our community, the Local Government Regulation 2012 has recently been amended in relation to public attendance at council meetings. This is to enable councils to comply with the national public health directions related to COVID-19. Would someone be prepared to move that council suspend standing orders to allow the meeting to be live streamed to ensure health and safety during COVID-19 health emergency? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Councillor Johnston, seconded, thank you. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 7 is presentations and councillor reports. We've got three presentations today, and they are from the Australian Institute of Architecture, Queensland Landscape Architecture Awards, and the first of those is the Sunshine Coast Design Book Award for Research, Policy and Communications, and Sarah Chalkley is here. Yes, g'day Sarah. And Councillor Cox, I understand you're going to move and receive the award. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. On behalf of Council, I would like to congratulate the Design and Placemaking Branch and all the staff involved in the development of the Sunshine Coast Design Book. And for those watching online and in the gallery here, This is the actual product that we're talking about, the Sunshine Coast Design Book. Great strategy that was developed by this Sunshine Coast Council. So this book has actually been produced to encourage, inspire and influence more appropriate and better design on the Sunshine Coast. Late last month, this book won the Australian Institute of Landscape Architecture Award in the Queensland category for Research, Policy and Communications. The book will now be in the running for a National Landscape Architecture Award. I am proud to have been a driver and supporter of this book since its inception in my previous role as Portfolio Councillor for Place Design and Development. The endorsement of this book was unanimously supported by the 2016 to 2020 councillors and was launched in late January this year. This book has been highlighted in numerous magazines and online articles. I had the pleasure of reading a few of those just in the last 48 hours, and has been applauded by industry groups and individuals including Kerry and Lindsay Clare, John Mainwaring, Noel Robinson and Bernard Salt. The book is also being highly recognised by peers in other councils and state governments as being a leader in its field. I'm just now going to read a quite short citation from the award jury, what they said about this particular book. This is not a document for designers. It is a must-read for anyone who invests in or has policy oversight for the health and well-being of not only the Sunshine Coast, but all of Queensland. The Sunshine Coast Design Strategy establishes a simple set of design principles to guide a new era of place-based decision-making in a fast-growing region. In a world of pandemics, fires, floods, cyclones and droughts, these principles are must-haves and should be embraced in the strategic framework of the Sunshine Coast planning scheme to benefit many people and places that call our Sunshine Coast home, both now and into the future. So I would just like to present this award to Sarah Chalkley, who's the branch manager, and on behalf of Council, we just want to say well done. Are we having a photo?
Thank you. The next presentation is under the same awards for the Australian Institute of Architecture, the Aerodrome Road intersection award for civic landscapes. And Sarah will also collect that award, but Councillor Suarez will... No. Oh, sorry, before we go on, I didn't get a seconder to Councillor Cox and a receipt. Councillor Joe, thank you very much. All those in favour of receipt, that's carried unanimously. Over to you, Councillor Suarez, to introduce the next award. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It gives me great pleasure to announce that Council staff have received the 2020 Australian Institute of Landscape Architecture Queensland Landscape Architecture Award for Civic Landscape. This is a genuine one-team project for the Sunshine Coast Council, and well done to the placemaking team, engineering services, project delivery and our civil construction crews. We look forward to seeing the trees growing up to really define this green arrival moment to the Maroochydore CBD. Well done to everyone involved, from the design concept to the quality of the constructed outcome. We've ended up with something simple, yet of exceptional quality that is intrinsically Sunshine Coast. Jamie's not here today, and Sarah is going to acknowledge the award. We don't have anything to hand to you today, but I'd like to acknowledge Jamie Franklin, Margot Ellis, Ben McGovern, Chris Sturgis, Ryan Butler and the CAM construction crews, with consultant Hassel WSP. The jury citation for this award was more than just an intersection upgrade, This is an exercise in urban repair and urban renewal, a project that both cools and connects while establishing a framework for future public transport and redevelopment opportunities. The addition of a simple park space with its lightweight domestically scaled timber structures and civically scaled treescapes provide welcoming shade and relief. This is an exemplar of good Sunshine Coast design, a deceptively simple and well-detailed project far from the rolling surf and cooling sea breezes that define this unique part of the world. The jury looks forward to seeing ongoing investment in Aerodrome Road as a regionally significant subtropical street that puts people and landscape first. So well done, Sarah.
Someone's the second, please. Councillor Landsberg, thank you. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. And the third item is the Interurban Break Outdoor Recreation Plan, the Regional Achievement Award in Landscape Architecture. And we have Tony Caldwell here and Councillor Cox again to move. Thanks, Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And once again, it's a great achievement by Sunshine Coast Council. This one is being recognised as the Australian Institute Landscape Architecture Awards for the Interurban Break Outdoor Recreation Plan. Specifically, the winner of this award was LAT 27, which was the consultants that Council engaged to run this particular project. We do have Tony Hardy here from Council's Senior Open Space and Recreation team. She's the senior planner there, and it's great to have her here being recognised today. The Regional Interurban Break is a 63,000 hectare area that overlaps both the Sunshine Coast Council area and the Moreton Bay Council area. Around about 50% is located within the Sunshine Coast Council area. Of note, this area is the green belt which separates Brisbane from the Sunshine Coast, and people can recognise it being from the iconic Glasshouse Mountains through to the Pumicestone Passage. The Interurban Break is one of many areas people enjoy outdoor activities in southeast Queensland, including bushwalking, climbing, four-wheel driving, mountain biking, fishing, trail bike riding and outdoor recreation plan. The project was a Sunshine Coast Council driven initiative undertaken over a 2-year period and was a collaborative project with a management team including representatives from HQ Plantations, Queensland National Parks, Sport and Recreation Queensland, Moreton Bay Regional Council, and completed by our consultants LAT 27. Once again, I'll just read a quick paragraph from the jury citation. This recreation plan focuses on one of the most highly visited landscapes in Queensland, being one that is under pressure from increased urban sprawl, densification of development among a number of natural landscapes. The recreation plan carefully addresses these contested landscapes, demonstrating a strong understanding of the natural values that occur alongside social, cultural and recreation perspectives from local communities. So I just wanted to once again recognise the great work from Council's team, especially Tony, who's here today to represent her particular branch. Well done, Tony.
Tony, my apologies for I had the wrong Tony, obviously. Thank you. Well done. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Babrowski, thank you. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, in relation to item 8.1, I'm informing you that under section 175E2 of the Local Government Act 2009, I may have a personal interest in the matter that is the subject of agenda item 8.1 on the basis that I received the following electoral donations. $380 on the 18th of January 2012 from RPS Australia East Proprietary Limited, and $400 on the 11th of February 2016 from RPS Consultants. I understand that RPS Australia East Proprietary Limited is the planning consultant for the applicant in this matter. Furthermore, councillors, in the last 2 days, it has been suggested to me that if a submitter to a development application has also assisted a councillor in some way in their election campaign, either financially or in a voluntary capacity, that could give rise to a perceived conflict of interest for the councillor if that development application is to be considered by council. Until recently, this is not something that I'd ever contemplated. I've therefore sought preliminary advice from the Local Government Association of Queensland and verbal advice from King & Company this morning. The advice is that those circumstances may give rise to a perception of a conflict of interest, and therefore the councillor should inform the council of that interest. Whilst I'm yet to receive formal advice, out of an abundance of caution, I'm informing council under section 175E2 of the Local Government Act 2009 that I may have a perceived conflict of interest in the matter that is the subject of agenda item 8.1 on the basis that the following parties made submissions on the development application, which is the subject of the report: Ray Shadforth, Timothy Shadforth, McLean Hensel, Caloundra Chamber of Commerce, Michael Shadforth of the Ray White Northern Group, and Cameron Hall. The perceived conflict of interest may arise because I have previously received the following electoral campaign donations: $1,800 on the 17th of January 2012 from Shad Sybil, $5,000 on the 20th of January 2012 from Shadforths, $5,000 on the 28th of February 2012 from Shadforth Civil Engineering, $5,000 on the 13th of April 2012 from Shadforths, $5,539.89 on the 28th of April 2012 from Shadforth Civil Engineering, and $25,000 on the 19th of October from 2015 from Shadforth Civil Engineering Contractors. $1,800 on the 17th of January 2012 from Pumice-Stone Passage Development Proprietary Limited, $5,000 on the 10th of April 2012 from Pumice-Stone Passage Proprietary Limited, $5,000 on the 23rd of December 2015 from Pelican Waters Heart, $2,000 on the 4th of February 2016 from Pelican Waters Heart, and $200 on the 19th of February 2016 from Caloundra Chamber of Commerce. $200 on the 29th of January 2016 from Michael Shadforth and the Caloundra Chamber of Commerce, $5,000 on the 23rd of January 2012 from Hall Contracting, $5,000 on the 24th of April 2012 from Hall Contracting Proprietary Limited, $2,000 on the 21st of October 2015 from Hall Contracting Proprietary Limited, and $2,000 on the 22nd of January 2016 from Cameron Hall at Hall Contracting. So on the basis of having received electoral campaign support from parties associated with submitters on the development application that is the subject of item 8.1, I will leave the chamber and not participate in the deliberation and vote on this matter, and I'd ask Councillor Babarowski if he would take the chair. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor O'Brien.
Just a question on that, if I could, through the CEO, Mr. Chair. I've got a lot to get through today, Mr. CEO, but I just think this is vitally important that I ask this question, potentially on behalf of the entire council that's left in here. There are a number of items on this agenda here today, and some of which have had an enormous amount of submissions come through to council. As the Mayor said in his earlier part of his speech it's only come to his attention. This has only just come to attention of myself and probably, dare say, everybody else in this room. How do we know and how can we be confident that we're doing the right thing here today if I haven't had a chance to go through all the submissions?
Mr Acting CEO.
Yes, it's some new information that we've received only recently, this morning. What I would suggest, possibly in relation to that, you need to be comfortable that you have gone through the submitters and made a call in relation to that. I probably would suggest at this stage you may want to lay this particular item on the table and for our team to get a copy of the submitters and for us to walk through with you during the day to try and make sure you're comfortable that there is no perceived conflict in relation to that and you are able to run through that process.
Thank you. If I can, Mr Chair. I'd really appreciate that, Mr CEO, and the reason I say that, councillors, let's not bugger this up. Let's make sure we got this right. I don't know if any of the submitters have donated my campaigns in the past. I simply don't know. So I absolutely want to know that we've got this down pat before we start debating and discussing this today. So, Mr Chair, if required, I'm happy to put a motion forward to lay this on the table to a later date, potentially today, if that's possible.
Jeez. Thank you, Councillor Prey. I'll just get some quick advice on that. Councillor Prey, I think would receive a procedural motion, so if you'd like to move that.
Yes, Mr Chair, and before I do, I just want to say that it's quite disappointing that councillors are finding this out on the floor of council. May I please put a motion forward that this item lay on the table until the conclusion, till it can lay on the table. We've got a time that we can suggest?
It's after 8.11.
Okay, so I'd like to move that we put 8.1 and make it lay on the table until the conclusion of all the other additional items that are here today, and we'll debate and discuss and vote on this as the last item on today's agenda.
Do we have a second? Councillor Suarez. Councillors, any questions? It's a procedural motion, so there's no debate. No. Okay. No. In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour of laying this on the table? That's carried unanimously. We'll presumably now move on to 8.2. Bring the Mayor back in.
Councillors, a move to item 8.2. And councillors, under section 175E2 of the Local Government Act, 2009, I wish to inform you that I may have a personal interest in the matter that is the subject of agenda item 8.2 on the basis that I've received the following electoral donations from representatives of Project Urban Proprietary Limited. On 3 January 2012, I received a donation of $380 from Andrew Stevens, who is the Managing Director of Project Urban Proprietary Limited. On the 3rd of February 2012, I received a further donation of $570 from Andrew Stevens. And on the 11th of January 2012, I received a donation of $380 from Kari Stevens, who was formerly a Director of Project Urban Proprietary Limited. I'm advised that Project Urban is the planning consultant to the applicant in this matter. I'm making this declaration out of an abundance of caution based on legal advice and advice that Council has previously received from the Department of Local Government, Racing and Multicultural Affairs. Given Project Urban is not the applicant, but rather a consultant engaged by the applicant, I have formed the view that given the nature of the personal interest, I believe I can appropriately manage any perceived conflict, should it exist, and that I can impartially make a decision in the public interest on this matter before Council today. I'll now ask the Deputy Mayor to assume the chair so that you may deliberate on this matter and make the necessary determinations under the Section 175E4 of the Local Government Act 2009.
Councillor, so we're considering a procedural motion. Councillors, is there someone prepared to move that Councillor Jamieson does not have or has a real or a perceived conflict of interest in the matter? Councillor Hungerford, that he does have a perceived conflict of interest in the matter. Do I have a second? Councillor Natoli. Any questions? In that case, I'll would I normally ask the Mayor to speak to
Thank
this
you.
declaration?
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillors, as I indicated a moment ago, Project Urban is the consultant planner to the applicant in this matter. That relationship is based on a commercial arrangement between the applicant and the consultant, arrangements of which I'm not privy to. Furthermore, whether or not this application is approved by Council provides no material benefit or disadvantage to me, one way or the other. I'm not under any obligation to Project Urban, Proprietary Limited, to support any development application for which they are the planning consultant. Nor would I be seeking electoral donations from Project Urban in the future, given they would likely be recognised as a prohibited donor. Therefore, I do not believe that by participating in the debate and the decision on this matter, that I would be unduly influenced in any way by the fact that the consultant planner had provided donations to my electoral campaign in 2012. On this basis, I believe I have the ability to objectively participate in the consideration of this report and manage any perception of a personal interest should it arise. Councillors, the matter is in your hands.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jamieson, Mr Mayor. Councillors, we're now considering, I'll just make it clear, that he does have a perceived conflict of interest. If that motion is supported, we would then go to a second motion which would determine whether he stays or leaves. So at this point, you're just voting on whether you agree that he does have a perceived conflict of interest. So may I put that to the floor? All those in favour that he does have a perceived conflict of interest. So we go Councillor Winston, Councillor Natoli, Councillor Cox, Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Law, Councillor Suarez, Councillor O'Prey, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Christian. Those against? Councillor Terry Landsberg. The motion is carried. We'll now vote on that the councillor should stay or leave the chambers. So, councillors,
Mr Chair.
I'll just read it formally. Councillors, in accordance with Section 175E4B of the Local Government Act, I now call for a councillor to move that the Councillor Jamieson stay for the duration of the meeting and the discussion and the decision on the matter. Councillor Cox, you're moving that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Landsberg, any questions? I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour that Councillor Jamieson stays? Councillor Winston, Councillor Cox, Councillor Landsberg, Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Law, Councillor Suarez, Councillor O'Prey, Councillor Christian. Those against? Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Natoli. The motion is carried. You may now resume the chair.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Councillor O'Prey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you. A few curly ones this morning. Thank you very much. 9 o'clock start. Just a quick question in regard to the same process that we went through in item 8.1 this morning. Was there any submissions put in towards 8.2 here this morning that need to be considered?
Not that I'm aware of, in terms of my own interests.
No, probably should have directed it through to the CEO. My apologies.
And as just to finish answering, as I indicated, this is something that's only revealed itself to me very recently, and I only got the legal advice first thing this morning, so that was why I presented it as I did.
Through you, Mr Mayor. This application, I believe, is a code-accessible application. We didn't receive any submissions in relation to it. While we may have received some people's views in relation to it, there are no formal submissions. I'm just checking with Tim. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to move that A, the Council receives and note the report titled Minor Changes to a Development Approval, Development Permit for Material Change of Use for Multi-Dwelling Units, 73 units, and corner shop at 2 and 6 Talinga Street, 84 and 85 Pacific Boulevard, and 61 and 63 Iluka Avenue, Buddina. And B, approve the application for minor changes to a development approval subject to amended conditions of approval provided in Appendix A as amended, namely. Now, Council, it's quite large amounts of amendments, but basically what it is, there are 6 conditions. Condition 54, 63,
Councillor Natoli, you're going to need to read all of them.
okay.
Can I just ask if we go to the presentation first, and then I'll come straight back to you as the mover, and we'll get a seconder and the detail of your amendments, and then we'll debate those and put it to the vote in due course. We'll go to Danny for the presentation first. Thank you, Danny.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 8.2 is a minor change application proposing to modify 5 conditions and add 1 condition to an existing development approval. The original approval was issued last year by Council at the April ordinary meeting. The proposed condition modifications relate solely to the lighting of the development to manage the impact upon turtle nesting on the adjacent beach. Being a minor change application to conditions only, the assessment is limited to the proposed conditions and not about whether the development should be approved or refused, or to change conditions or requirements that were not requested by the applicant. The matter is before the OM today at the request of the Divisional Councillor. This slide shows the locality of the site. The subject site is located in the high-density residential zone of the Buddina urban village, as shown in the dark red there. The proposed development was code-accessible and declared by the planning scheme to be a consistent use for the zone it's located in. The proposed development was determined to comply with the planning scheme following a thorough assessment, and therefore a recommendation to approve the development was put to the April 2019 ordinary meeting. An approval was issued on the 2nd of May 19 after determination at the April ordinary meeting, and then a negotiated decision notice was issued on the 12th of September. The approval took effect on the 11th of October last year after the negotiated decision notice. The approval has not yet been acted on, and there are concurrent appeal proceedings that have been lodged in the Planning and Environment Court that are separate to this matter about the development. The appeal is independent of the application for a minor change to the conditions, and no regard can be had to the appeal proceedings in assessing the current application before Council. As mentioned, the application seeks to modify particular conditions. Those are 54, 63, 69, 70 and 73, and also to add a new condition 70A. These conditions relate to the management of lighting and sky glow, particularly in relation to potential impacts on marine turtles. There are no other changes proposed by the applicant. This means that Council cannot reconsider other aspects of the approval that was granted last year. This slide shows a summary of the conditions that have been proposed to be amended by the applicant. A detailed version of the recommended wording changes and the individual words proposed to be changed and recommended by officers to be changed are contained in the report. Condition 54 was about the use of landscaping as a barrier to light emission. Condition 63 is about certification of lighting devices throughout the development to meet the conditions of approval. It also provides a procedure for management and resolution of complaints. Condition 69 is a requirement for the development at all times to minimise or reduce the sky glow values that existed on the site pre-development. This condition is proposed to be amended to be more clear about the methodology and the extent of night lighting survey tests required to determine compliance with those sky glow values to ensure a worst-case scenario. It also introduces the requirement for multiple surveys, if necessary, to respond to complaints or council-directed corrective actions. Condition 70 is specific building design and construction requirements, including the use of window tinting and automatic opaque blinds to assist with maintaining or reducing the sky glow values. The key proposed changes to 70 that are recommended in the report are that automatic blinds be installed on windows and doors to automatically close after 8 p.m, and also that motion sensor lighting on balconies and common areas be installed. These improvements would reduce reliance on human behaviour that were in the original condition set. There were some community concerns raised during the course of the minor change application. They included whether or not the proposal constitutes a minor change and whether the proposed condition changes maintain the intent of the original condition set. The application was assessed in accordance with the Planning Act and the Sunshine Coast Planning Scheme. It was assisted by an external independent lighting expert. Overall, the recommended condition changes are considered suitable for approval because they maintain the original condition set, they add requirements to the original condition set, they provide greater clarity of the conditions, greater enforceability of the conditions, and replace conditions that had a reliance on behavioural compliance with measures such as automation to aid in enforceability. Not all of the conditions proposed by the applicant are recommended to be adopted. The focus of the staff assessment was to ensure an equal or better outcome is achieved through the changed conditions. The assessment took on board the detailed comments of submitters that were made during the course of the assessment. As mentioned, the assessment today is in relation to the requested changes only. If Council were to reject all changes proposed, recommended by staff, the approval of the development with its current conditions will continue to remain and be in effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. Back to you, Councillor Natali.
Okay, as I said...
So just to be clear, you want to put forward an alternate?
Yes.
Yep. I'll let you go through the detail, then we'll get a seconder before the debate.
Okay. So you want me to read all of the conditions that are in here?
We're duty bound.
Okay. All right. So, as I said, I'll move A, receipt and note the report titled Minor Changes to a Development Approval, Development Permit for Material Change of Use for a multi-dwelling unit, in brackets 73 units, close brackets, and shop, in brackets corner store, in brackets, at 2 and 6 Talinga Street, 84 and 85 Pacific Boulevard, and 61 and 63 Aluka Avenue, Buddina. And B, approve the application for a minor change to a development approval subject to the amended conditions of approval provided at Appendix A as amended, namely landscape and landscape works. 54, the development site must be landscaped the works must be undertaken in accordance with the operational works approval and the Sunshine Coast Council landscape materials palette for the specific area and must include, in particular, A, deleted, B, landscape strips to road frontages generally in accordance with the approved plans, comma, exclusive of the access driveways, generally uncompromised in infrastructure items. C, provision of trees within the landscape frontage strips at an average of 6 metre centres. D, vegetated screening of retaining walls and courtyards addressing the road frontage designs such that will be screened at maturity. E, provision of feature trees within a development site at the corners of Pacific Boulevard and Tillinga Street and Aluka Avenue. F, landscape alongside rear boundary interface with lot 309 B92911 and lot 283 B92911 comprising of shrubs at 1 to 1.5 metre centres, and where space is available, common trees at 6 metre centres. G, vegetated screening to the side or sides of the electrical transformers and in front of the bin storage areas and the like from the road frontage. H, provision of one street tree within road reserve for every 6 metres of road frontage, Pacific Boulevard, Tillinga Street and Aluka Avenue. Delete I and replace it with I, vegetation screening to minimise light spill onto the beach and to the sky. Next heading, environment lighting devices, 63. Prior to commencement of the use, certification must be submitted to council from a qualified person that all lighting devices comply with the requirements of this development approval. Following commencement of the use and having regard to the nature of the complaint made to council about lighting impacts from approved use, as well as previous testing results, corrective actions and compliance history. Council may require the site management entity to 1. Undertake additional testing, in brackets, until the results of testing achieve confirmation of compliance with the conditions of this development approval, in brackets. 2. Where necessary, undertake amelioration measures to ensure that development complies with the conditions of this development approval. And 3. Submit certification from a qualified person that the development complies with the conditions of this development approval. Ecological turtle lighting, 69. At all times, the development must demonstrate that and maintain the existing established sky glow values under identical conditions, i.e. clear sky. The developer is to engage a consultant to prepare a pre- and post-construction artificial light at night to determine changes to light emissions from the development to the adjacent turtle nesting beach, generally in accordance with the methodology and equipment described in the Sunshine Coast Council and Moreton Bay Council's benchmark Artificial Light at Night Survey 2017. A, the pre-construction light survey is to be undertaken prior to any site works commencing on the site. B, the post-construction light survey is to be undertaken by the developer on completion of the development. And C, the light surveys are to be submitted to council officers for their review and assessment. Should the post-construction as-built audit identified that correctional actions are required, these are to be undertaken by the developer. 70. The development must ensure no direct spillage of light to the beach or 4 dunes of Buddina Beach or to the beaches to the north or south of the ocean and sky. The body corporate must undertake an annual audit verifying all automated controls, including lighting, blinds, doors and screens, are compliant with approval conditions and must provide a certificate of compliance to council at least 2 weeks before the 1st of October annually. Indoor and outdoor lighting and signage must be designed, installed, positioned and at all times managed and operated to minimise light spill and maintain or reduce the existing established sky glow levels at the adjacent turtle nesting grounds, including by the use of reducing intensity, long wavelength lights, lights which are fitted with shields, outdoor lighting which is located low to the ground and directed only onto specific areas of interest, use of low reflectant building surfaces and paint, and tinted glazing. Specific design requirements for the lighting controls include A, all window glazing, and in brackets, including windows and doors, close brackets, on the north, south and eastern elevation must be tinted with non-reflective tinting or utilise smart glass technology to achieve a maximum 15% visibility light transmission. I, all windows and doors within all units on the north, south and eastern elevations must be fitted with automatic opaque blinds. The automated blinds must be configured to close automatically. It must remain closed between 8 p.m. and sunrise during turtle nesting and hatching season, 1st of October to the 31st of May. 2, all balcony doors within the units on the north, south and eastern elevations must be automated. The automated doors must be configured to be closed automatically and must remain closed between 8 p.m. and sunrise during turtle nesting and hatching season, 1st of October to the 31st of May. C, indoor and outdoor paint surfaces fixtures must be matte and dark in colour and have a maximum reflectant value of 30%. All outdoor lights must have a maximum of 2,700 K correlated colour temperature CCT. All indoor lights must have a maximum of 3,000 K CCT. All lighting, interior and exterior, must avoid the use of halogen, metal, headlight and fluorescent lights. E, amber LED 590/610 NM or low pressure sodium lighting must be used as a standard. Warm white is to be used only where colour retention is required. LED lights must not contain shortwave blue light, and suppliers should be asked to provide spectral power curve and requested LEDs to prove the absence of short wavelengths. F, the number and wattage of lights must be minimised and achieve compliance within AS428 column 2019, and in brackets, control of obstructive efforts of outdoor lighting, close brackets. G, all outdoor lights, in brackets, including balcony lighting, close brackets, where mounted on the building, must be recessed into structures and/or roof ceilings, or where it can be recessed, fitted with appropriate shields and directed away from the beach and to avoid direct illumination of the beach, ocean and sky at night. H, no lighting is permitted on the roof of the building. I, balcony lights must be turned off between 8 p.m. and sunrise during turtle nesting and hatching season, the 1st of October to the 31st of May. No outdoor power points are to be installed on the balcony. J, outdoor features lighting to the building must be positioned below 10 metres in height and turned off between 8 p.m. and sunrise during turtle nesting and hatching season, 1st of October to 31st of May. K, no upward lights or vertical illumination of the building, vegetation or other structures using lighting that shines into the sky is to be used during the nesting and hatching season, 1st of October to 31st of May. Outdoor lighting, including balcony lighting and indoor common area lighting, including all corridors above ground level, stairwells, entry points, etc., must be activated by a proximity sensor or motion detectors with an association deactivation of lighting after no more than 10 minutes. M, smart lighting technology, including dimming controls, must be incorporated for all indoor and outdoor lighting in all stories above the first story to reduce light emissions during critical turtle breeding periods, the 1st of October to 31st of May. N, no decorative outdoor lighting, for example, fairy Christmas lights to be used during the nesting and hatching season, 1st of October, 31st of May. O, pool lighting must be switched off after 8 p.m. during nesting and hatching season, 1st of October, 31st of May. P, any external signage on the eastern seaward side of the development must not be illuminated during nesting and hatching season, 1st of October, 31st of May. Q, any lighting in recreation areas within the development must be switched off and operate on a proximity sensor after 8 p.m. during nesting and hatching. And 1, Council must require the site management entity to 1, undertake additional testing, in commas, until the results of testing achieve confirmation of compliance with the condition of this development approval. 2, where necessary, undertake amelioration measures to ensure that the development complies with the conditions of this development approval. And 3, submit certification from a qualified person that the development complies with conditions of this approval. Ecology, turtle nesting. 6, sorry. I've actually read the wrong thing, sorry. So from the 31st of October to the 31st of May. All lighting within the development, indoor and outdoor, must be shielded by a maximum of 300 millimetre, should be 300 millimetre vertical shielding. S, visual screening through vegetation screens must be applied to all lighting towards the coastline and sky. And T, reflective materials must be used to delineate pathways, and embedded lighting must be used wherever possible. If lights are used, they are to be amber in colour, maximum 2,700K CCTV, as low as possible, intermittent flashing only, facing upwards from the beach, and to be fitted with 300 millimetre vertical shades to contain light spill. 70A, in addition to the requirements of conditions 24, 25 and 72, A, the bylaws of the proposed community management statement must require 1, the occupiers of each unit to comply with and ensure that all visitors comply with condition 70 in relation to their unit. 2, the owners of each unit, where not the occupier, to ensure that all occupiers of the visitors to their unit comply with condition 70 in relation to their unit. And 3, all occupiers and the visitors do not do anything to outdoor areas of the common property that result in contravention of condition 70. And B, the occupiers of each unit must comply with and ensure that all visitors comply with condition 70 in relation to their unit. C, the owners of each unit, where not the occupier, must comply with and ensure that all occupiers of and visitors of their units comply with condition 70 in relation to their unit. And D, all occupiers must not do and must ensure that their visitors do not do anything in outdoor areas of common property that result in the contravention of condition 70. And E, the body corporate for the subject site must 1, comply with condition 70 in relation to the common property, and 2, ensure that the owners, occupiers and visitors do not do anything that results in the contravention of condition 70. Ecological and land rehabilitation. The land area located east of the development, Buddina Foreshore Reserve, identified on the reference revegetated area map, must be rehabilitated and revegetated in accordance with the operational works approvals, and must include the removal of all weed species listed in the following standards and legislation. A, the removal of all weed species listed in the following standards and legislation. I, invasive plants listed in the Biosecurity Act 2014. And 2, Sunshine Coast Local Government Area Pest Management Plan 2012 to 2016. And B, the planting of locally occurring native species to achieve optimum community structure and densities.
Thank you, Councillor Natali. Take a breath.
Thank you.
Can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Now, would you like to briefly explain to your colleagues, Councillor, your rationale without necessarily going into all the detail again?
Yes. Mr Mayor, I did send a document to all of the councillors, and I know we've had a lot in the last week. With Twin Waters West, the amount of emails that we've all received, the amount of inquiries, and we've been extremely busy. And of course, we're trying to get this information out as detailed to allow councillors to be able to have as much information before they get to the meeting has been a challenge, but I managed to get it out yesterday, and forgive me for those councillors that didn't have the time to read it all. Basically, out of the 6 conditions, 5 have been proposed by the developer, and the other one has been included by our officers. And these conditions were brought to the council by the developer to be amended. What we have to understand is that we have a building that sits in an incredibly environmentally eco-sensitive area. It's protected by, in terms of the turtle, the loggerheads are nationally listed as endangered. There are a number of acts, there are a number of codes that we have that basically protect the loggerhead turtles and their environment. And this building is an incredibly difficult building to be able to manage that conflict between the built environment and the natural environment. Incredibly difficult and challenging. And one of the things that we have come up against in the offices is that I've asked them for guarantees that, you know, what the reliance in terms of the experts that we've had, that the conditions that we have here actually do exactly what those acts and the codes specify that we do, is that we don't affect the nesting areas of the turtles during the hatching period. So what comes first, the turtles' rights or the human rights in terms of taking this space and wanting to live there? And this building is it can't be treated like every other building. It can't be treated like a high-rise building in Mooloolaba or Alex or Maroochydore, where we already have probably defeated the purpose of trying to protect those beaches. But in Buddina, the map that I did provide all the councillors right at the end is a map that's taken from the council's own map. And it shows all of the turtle nesting in Buddina, and it shows the site here, directly opposite this beach. And there's a very narrow beachfront. It sits on the primary dune, right on top of the primary dune. So there's very little buffer, and we all know about the erosion prone, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about the impact of this building. And the biggest challenge that our council officers have is, how do you stop the impact being from 5 residential homes that sit no higher than 8.5 metres to a building that now will have 73 dwellings plus a shop that sits 21 metres and visibly seen from the beach? How do you stop human behaviour from impacting and contravening all of the requirements that we have in terms of protecting the nesting beach, the beach for the nesting of the loggerhead turtles? And it's almost impossible. I don't believe that we can and have the ability to be able to provide conditions that deal with human behaviour. So that's why the officers had moved to automation, because we take out the impact of human behaviour and try and build in a set of conditions that tries to build some means of controlling the impact of this building on the beach. And like Bargara, where the minister had imposed quite stringent conditions, no one in Bargara can have lighting on during turtle season from any time. So basically, from the time it goes dark to the next day in Bargara, that no one is allowed to have any lighting on their balconies. So we're not setting precedent. Condition 69 that talks about the reason is one of the conditions that I want to go back to the original condition that we had. And it was interesting that out of the transcript that we had from the previous ordinary meeting, 30th of April last year, when this development came to council, that our own officers said, we believe that the conditions are stringent. They are a combined package of measures that will work together serve to maintain the existing conditions on the beach and would not involve any additional light glow impact on the beach. We feel our condition package is quite comprehensive and it is to the satisfaction of our specialist staff. So, and of course, the answer to Councillor Praise whether the environmental issues will the turtle lighting mitigation process be adequate and legal and lawful, our in-house specialists have confirmed that in their professional opinion, that the full suite of turtle conditions will be appropriate to mitigate any impact of lighting arising from this development. So the process that we've gone through here is that the officers have come, looked at these conditions that the developer asked, and we have to make sure we don't lessen those conditions. 69, I believe, allows a lot of outs for the developer in terms of the way they measure the lights and the surveys that they have to provide. And what we basically, by going back and saying, let's take out the amended condition that the officers have said that they are quite happy to allow the developer to have, go back with the original condition is what I'm asking for, because I believe that that is a much more stringent and it is basically reflected similar to the type of condition that was put forward by the judge in regards to sewerage.
Councillor Tully, do you need an extension?
Yes, please.
Can someone move, please? Councillor Cox, seconded Councillor Babarowski. All those in favour? That's carried. Carry on.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you, councillors. So condition 69 has previously been approved by council, had been approved by the officers, and they thought that that was adequate. And I believe that that condition still should be left as it was, unamended. So the only other condition, because there are 4 conditions in here that I'm happy with the officers. So basically condition 54, condition 63, and then there's condition 70A and the one about the ecology. I'm happy with 69. I want to revert back to the original condition and not amend that. And then there's talk about condition 70, and that talks about the human behaviour. That's the most challenging one. I mean, what's the point of putting opaque blinds and tinting on windows and all the glazing on the doors? Because I know I've lived in units and balconies. The doors will be open, and we are not allowed to allow spillage of light from both the through the windows and through the doors. So if we don't introduce automation and make sure that it's foolproof, then we're not going to be able to manage this. And I think it has to be incumbent upon us to ensure that we do everything we can to bring in that automation and allow it to work. It's a challenge. It's not an easy fit. It is a challenge to be able to get this building to be able to do exactly what we're obligated to do, is to protect those turtles. And we can allow this building to go up there, but it can't be like any other building. It has to have conditions. And the responsibility of those conditions are upon all of the owners. As you've read through these conditions that the officers have put in here, it's incumbent on all of the owners to make sure that they don't contravene sanity. But how do you do that? Because as we know, 73 individual owners, what is the compliance ability of council to be able to go and make sure that they do this? It's the body corporate. And it's identified that the body corporate has to create its own laws, bylaws, within the building that every owner has to meet. I've been on 3 separate body corporates, and they are rigid, and they make sure that compliance is there. And that's why it's important that when they have the responsibility in terms of making sure that all the automation, all the lighting meets the conditions that we've set for the life of the building, they must do annual compliance checking, making sure that every unit can do that. The body corporate has that ability to do that. And by then undertaking that and providing a certificate of compliance to council, I think gives us some assurance that human behaviour and the way that people live won't adversely affect our decision to approve this building and allow it to coexist with the nation. It's tough. You know, it's a requirement on this developer, and it's probably unprecedented in terms of Sunshine Coast. But we know that there are many other buildings that could go to that height in that site, and if we look at the cumulative effect, if we didn't do this, we might as well give up. So I'm saying we have a chance here. We allow this building to go up. There's a different set of rules to any other development on Sunshine Coast, but if they want to live there and make sure that we don't destroy the environment and the number of obligations that we have to protect those turtles for this generation, future generation, it's incumbent upon us to make this building work. And I think having these amendments gives the officers the greatest ability to be able to make sure that compliance is going to happen and that we actually get an outcome that can work, that could possibly work. And I'm satisfied to move that, and I hope that I can get a second, and I hope that I can get the support of the councillors and demonstrate to the community that, you know, technology can be part of the solution to some of the things that we can do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Natali. We already have Councillor Hungerford as a seconder.
Oh,
Any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Suarez.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I may ask a question of Councillor
Yes.
Natali. Apologies, Councillor Natali, I didn't read this before the meeting this morning, and I'd just like to ask you a question. I believe the intention was originally to negotiate the conditions rather than just accept what's being given here. Can you just give me some insight as to why you've changed your direction on this?
in terms of, you're stating that we had obviously the developer approached council to modify these conditions, and our officers have obviously looked at that. We had a lighting expert last week. I asked the question to the lighting expert, can you give us guarantees that, in her opinion, we won't have detrimental impacts on the turtle nesting beach? She couldn't give us that. And I don't believe any officer and any expert will ever do that, because we know that there could be failure. And the failure will be based on human behaviour, absolutely, because we know that humans act differently. So when I said about the balconies, if every balcony was lit up after 8 p.m, would it increase the sky glow values of that building in terms of the measures that they took? And she said yes. So it's incumbent upon us to make sure that the human behaviour does not impact, and exactly what I've put in here, those two conditions, that one replaces 69 back to the original condition that was supported by the council previously, and condition 70 includes two aspects. One, additional automation, and the other aspect is the compliance that is incumbent on the body corporate to do that annual check, just to make us feel comfortable that they're actually doing it. Because otherwise, if we revert to trying to manage this like every other complaint, we don't know whether there's going to be an on-site manager in the site. There may or may not be, but if there isn't, how does a compliance officer make and communicate with the building? It has to be via letters. It takes weeks for that to happen. So, you know, for me, I believe that it's incumbent upon us to make sure that whatever conditions that we put in here, the developer understands that we're prepared to support this development going forward.
Councillor, can I just check? Are you getting an answer to your question? No. Would you please ask again? Would you try and confine it to the question, Councillor?
Sorry, Councillor Natali. I'm very supportive of tightening restrictions regarding turtle nesting. My question is, this motion that you're putting forward is just basically asking council to approve the conditions that have been outlined here underneath. I believe the original intention was to put forward that the council negotiate the conditions before they're set and locked in place, because I've received information from other turtle nesting groups that also have some concerns, or just slight tweaks that they would like to make to the conditions that have been put forward by the council staff. So I want to understand why the original intention to negotiate the conditions has now been changed to just accept what you put forward from the group.
Well, I think, it's still incumbent upon us as councillors to understand, like we heard from Mr Rundle, that, we haven't accepted everything that the developers asked. They've come to us and they want to change these conditions. Yes, we may have negotiated, but ultimately we are the decision-making body. If we want to vote for something and put something forward, I think it's incumbent upon us to look at that, and if they're not comfortable with what we've put forward here, then there are still mechanisms for them to be able to challenge those. But these conditions here, I think, these conditions are the ones that we can only deal with. We can't deal with any other conditions. They're the conditions that they brought to us, and I think ultimately they put down their suggestions. I think it's incumbent upon us to be able to put what we are prepared to accept. So,
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to assist with that question, I'll put a question to the planners. It's my understanding with any conditions with an application that goes through and approved by council, the after they come back and negotiate in their decisions that they want to challenge with the planning department and have a negotiated decision on those. I believe that is the process that a developer has after receiving conditions to come back and request a negotiation on those.
Through you, Mr Mayor. No, this is a minor change application, so whatever council decides today about the conditions will be the final conditions on the development, and the applicant would have to lodge an appeal. I believe perhaps what you're referring to there, Councillor Hungerford, is with the first decision that was issued in April last year. The Act allows an applicant to make representations to negotiate at that time, but that process has now been completed. That negotiated decision was in October last year. Now we have a minor change application to an approval that's already in effect, and the decision with the conditions today will stand and can only be appealed by the applicant.
I hope that helps, Councillor. No question.
Councillor Babrowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Perhaps to Danny. Have you had an opportunity to test these amended minor conditions with the developer to assess whether they're likely to accept them, and if they weren't, are we likely to see an appeal?
Through you, Mr Mayor, no, I haven't. I certainly haven't spoken to the applicant about the conditions before you with the alternative resolution. We, as a team, had a brief look at them yesterday. It's probably fair to say that we haven't had the benefit of time to unpack all of the conditions. I guess I would caution council about making changes to individual conditions, because the recommendation of the staff went through a process of all the conditions being reviewed together. It went through our lighting expert, it went through our legal team, and there was a lot of discussion and assessment, I suppose, about the individual wording of each condition and how they relate to the other conditions. So I suppose making changes to individual conditions there at this point, there is a risk that it may cause some degree of clash with other conditions that haven't been considered with the fullness of time. That would be my answer.
Go to Councillor Cox.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Fully understand what Councillor Untitled is trying to do here today and try and strengthen, in his opinion, the conditions which he read out earlier. And I'm all for strengthening conditions, as Councillor Suarez has already said. I think that's part of our role, to challenge the conditions and to look for opportunities to strengthen them. However, with this particular amendment, I do believe it's a step too far. And I certainly acknowledge the additional information that we had from the council officers in response to some of the local community concerns, which was provided just in the last few days. So taking that information on board in relation to the specific conditions, I'm giving a lot of weight to what the officers have said. I think the practicality of a couple of the conditions that have been proposed this morning just make living in the apartment complex not very practical. And specifically, they are 70B Mark II, which is talking about all of the balcony doors being automated, and then 70I, which talks about all of the balcony lights must be turned off. And I'm just thinking of the residential dwellings that adjoin this particular site, and they're up to 3 stories in some instances, and the residents there are allowed to have lights on. They're allowed to use their balconies, entertain there, enjoy the summer breezes, and for us to impose such harsh conditions on this particular dwelling, I just think it is that step too far, and I just can't see the practicality of it. Especially when this morning I announced that we'd won an award for our Sunshine Coast design strategy, which talks about the design principles of living with our environment. This particular development will have balconies that will catch the sea breezes, and for them not to be able to be used after 8 o'clock at night in summer with that automation just means that the residents will be forced inside. They won't have any breezes because the doors are all closed, and there'll be a heavy reliance on air conditioning, which I don't think is a very smart situation for our Sunshine Coast community. So, councillors, if this motion doesn't get supported, I will flag that I will move the officer's recommendation, because I do believe it's the most practical, sensible application to strengthening the position of council in relation to this matter. So, councillors, please take that into consideration, and I look forward to seeing how people vote.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. No further. Councillor O'Prey.
A quick question, if I may, Mr. Mayor, through you. Mr. Rundle, you made comment to us in part of your early conversations after Councillor Natoli read out the conditions about showing caution, or urging us to show caution about changing up the detail of the conditions here today and doing it like this. Could you unpack that a little bit for me? What should we be wary of?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I suppose what I was referring to there is that the condition package is drafted as a suite of conditions. So we're not talking about one condition, we're talking about 5 conditions that have an interrelationship with each other. As you heard with the conditions being read out, there's a lot of content to the conditions, and we went through a thorough process as a team, and also with our lighting experts and our legal team, to look at what was being proposed by the applicant, like changing a word here and there, and each of the words have different levels of clarity and meaning, and the clarity and meaning of words then turn into how enforceable those words are. So I suppose it was gone through with a fine-tooth comb to get to the recommendation of staff, and the recommendation of staff was not to adopt all of the conditions as it was proposed by the applicant, but to make some changes where it was considered necessary to preserve the intent and to make the conditions equal or better to what the original conditions were. So I suppose my comment about caution was just to make a decision where that process has not occurred in respect to changes that might be tinkering with some conditions but not others.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just clarify a point that was raised by Councillor Cox? Can I just absolutely understand, are we suggesting that the use of the balconies themselves after 8 p.m. won't be permitted and will be automated to the level where you can't use a balcony, or is it just the light emissions on the balcony? Can I just understand that for sure?
So is that question to Councillor Natali or Councillor Natali?
Look, it could be read like that, but I think the important thing is that if the balcony was still able to be used and people be out there, the question is whether they will introduce lighting to those balconies. So, you know, that condition can be changed so that the doors still automatically close and people can still access those balconies. But the thing is that they have to sit out there and be mindful that they can't introduce any lighting into those balcony areas by means of plug-in or whatever extension leads. And it's important that, you know, if they want to use those balcony lights, that balconies, that it be done without the lights there. So, you know, there could be parts of those conditions where it says that the doors must be locked, but we can take that out.
Are you satisfied with the response?
I certainly feel I understand. I feel I better understand. I assume it was about lighting controls. It's actually prohibiting the use of lighting. I understand.
Let me go to Councillor Johnston.
Mr Mayor, I'd just like to ask a question first of the planning officer. Is there a time frame that we have to deal with this issue? Like, is there a time limitation? Could it be deferred to next month to get a report from the planning department in relation to
Ask that question.
whether changes, whether these changes are reasonable, etc., or in fact enforceable?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, you may be aware that there is...
Is that microphone on?
Turn them on.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, you may be aware that there is an appeal occurring, an originating application for the approval that was issued for the entirety of the development last year. Part of the adjournment to the 21st of August for that originating application was on the basis that Council would be reviewing these conditions now. Therefore, a deferment could impact the reasons for the adjournment as part of the originating application. So just to be aware that that could potentially lead to Council not complying with the reasons that the adjournment has been issued for as part of the originating application process.
Is that...
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Question, Councillor Natali.
In condition 70B2, where it says the automated doors must be configured to be closed automatically, we could amend that and delete the remainder of that sentence so that if you just delete and must remain closed between 8 p.m. and sunrise during the turtle nesting and hatching season. So if we just leave the automatic doors must be configured to close automatically, and if we delete the remainder of that, then they still can get access to that balcony. But if that clarity, I'm happy to delete that part if the seconder is happy to accept that.
Can you just confirm that what's on the screen is what you're saying, Councillor?
That's correct, yes.
Councillor Hungerford, you're happy with that? Okay, good. Councillor Cox.
Just a question in relation to that particular change. So am I correct in understanding that the doors will automatically close, the blinds will automatically come down now, and then 70 point I talks about all the balcony lighting being off? Is that how I'm... Okay.
And the balcony lighting was actually conditioned in the previous approval, which I believe Councillor Cox you supported. So it's nothing new.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Suarez.
Just want to acknowledge Danny and the planning team. The turtle nesting groups that I've spoken to are pleased with a lot of the recommendations that you guys have made, and they definitely believe that these conditions are better than what was originally proposed. However, they do still have some items that they would like to tweak. Councillor Natoli, I was a little concerned with some of these conditions after I'd heard you read them out. I'm happy with the amended change. They don't fully encompass everything that the other turtle groups are looking for, and for them it's very important because this is going to set a precedence going forward for other developments on the site down there as well as developments north of the river. However, it does address a number of their tweaks that they would like to have changed, so I will support you in this motion. However, if it doesn't get up, like Councillor Cox, I will be supporting the officer's original recommendation because they'd rather have some benefits than no benefits at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Law.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you, and a question to the officers, if I may. I'm concerned that the discussion and negotiations of conditions related to a planning application happening on the floor of council here, are we putting ourselves at risk that we could actually lose the benefit of the proposal that has come forward because we're not, as you said yourself, we haven't got the certainty that these are going to be strong enough and defensible enough. So I just would really like some clarity around, are we actually really doing the very best that we can by having this discussion here?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I suppose the advice of our lighting expert and our appeals team and our legal team was that the changes that were recommended by the staff to this meeting were an improvement on the original condition set. So I suppose I don't have, at this point in time, without the fullness of time and assessment, confidence that reverting back to the, in particular, condition 69, which is back to the original approval condition, I can't give any confidence today that by doing that is not or would be in council's interests, given the advice that we've had leading into today, that the changes made to that condition would actually, together with all of the conditions, be an improvement, certainty, clarity, enforcement ability. So I can't, I guess I can't give a guarantee either way. All I can say is that what's come before you today has been through that rigorous assessment and test, and I'm informed and of the view that the conditions have been improved. So reverting back to the conditions from the original decision notice may not be as strong as the ones before you today.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Johnson, then Councillor Suarez.
Mr Mayor,
sorry.
Can I just ask the planning officer, if we adopt the original resolution or this amended resolution, is that creating a precedent for future developments along the foreshore?
I suppose, through you, Mr Mayor, whatever the condition package that is decided upon today will be visible, will be council's decision about an application in these circumstances in this location. So I would suspect it would impact on future conditioning of other developments in the area.
I think the point that I'm trying to get at is if we adopt the original resolution and it turns out that it's not strong enough and we'd like to introduce additional conditions on other developments, is that going to be a problem from a precedent point of view?
I suppose it depends too whether the conditions survive through an appeal process, because that would occur potentially after the decision today.
Mr Mayor, thank you very much. Mr Mayor, I'm mindful of what Mr Rapay said. I find this a difficult matter to make a decision on from the point of view that it's extremely comprehensive. We've only just received the amended suggested resolution, and
At the same time, I'm conflicted, just like some of the other councillors, I believe, in relation to whether the original proposed conditions were strong enough. If I had a seconder, I'd move if it's likely to get a seconder, I'd probably like to move, even though Mr. Rapre said that it could be a problem, that we defer the decision to the next meeting pending further consultation and input on these recommendations from the planning staff.
Well, I've already got a foreshadowed motion from Councillor Cox on approving the officer recommendation.
And I'm moving a procedural motion that we defer further consideration until the next monthly meeting, pending that report.
Give me some advice just on that. Is someone happy to second Councillor Johnston's proposal of the deferment? And do you want to put some sort of time frame on that, Councillor Johnston?
For a final decision at the next monthly meeting.
Okay.
Or an earlier special meeting. Doesn't matter.
Well, I guess, Mr. CEO, what sort of time is reasonable for your staff? I mean, we've got a whole lot of material here this morning to consider. Much of it for the first time, and advice from our executive leadership group around risks there. But can you give us some insights into what's a reasonable time, please?
Through Mr. Mayor. Yeah, obviously the information needs to be assessed. We'd want our specialists to go through it in terms of the lighting specialist to make sure it's there, and make sure our legal advice sees that those conditions are written together in relation to it. I think if that would take a number of weeks, and obviously that would be appropriate to make it to the next ordinary meeting on the 20th of August. But I do note that the court proceedings was to start on the 21st, the day after that, in relation to that. So there may be some legal challenge in relation to, are we deferring that legal process?
All right, so we've got a mover in Councillor Johnston. Is there a seconder? Okay, thank you, Councillor Dixon. Sorry, just a moment. So just in terms of the procedural motion that's been put forward, we need to take a vote on that. Councillor Suarez.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just for some understanding about the procedures of what's happening today. With not taking this current motion into account for the moment, the previous motion that Councillor Natoli put forward, if that was to be defeated, do we then vote on the original motion as per the agenda items?
That's what Councillor Cox has foreshadowed, yes.
So if we go with this procedural motion to defer this item, nothing will occur until September.
August.
Oh, sorry, August. Okay, so if this is defeated, we still have the opportunity to either go with Councillor Natoli's or the officer's recommendations.
We would go back to Councillor Natoli first, vote on that, and then based on Councillor Cox's foreshadowing of moving the officer's recommendation, we'll deal with that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Natoli?
Mr. Mayor, I would support deferring this for a month to the next ordinary meeting if the amended motion that I've had is able to be worked with the officers. I'd be happy for any other councillor.
We don't really debate procedural motion, so let's put the motion to the vote. So those in favour of Councillor Johnston's procedural motion to defer to 20 August 2020, show of hands please. Councillor Johnston, Councillor Natoli. Those opposed? Councillor Cox, Landsberg, Babarowski, Jamieson, Law, Suarez, O'Prey, Hungerford and Dixon. The procedural motion is lost. So we're back to, I think, wrapping up Councillor Natoli's motion, and I do want to give Councillor O'Prey the opportunity to speak because I missed you before.
I had one question and it was relating to Councillor Suarez's commentary and concerns, and I get it. So maybe through to Mr Rundell, if this gets up today and it's locked in, can it be added to post this decision today? Further conditions that other turtle groups might want to add to it? That's my first question. And the second part to it is that does it negate any further negotiations to the proceeding as well? So that means if the I'm finding this hard to explain, but if it's set in stone today, can it be added to? I know and understand it can't be subtracted to, but can it be added to? It's probably a better way of saying it.
You mean in the future for other developments?
No, for this development. For this particular development. So if we lock this in today, all those conditions that Councillor Ntoli's gone through, is that locked in forever and a day, and Councillor Suarez's other turtle groups cannot add to it?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the only way that the conditions could be changed after this decision would be if the applicant were to lodge an appeal against Council's decision, and that may result in another review of the conditions, or if the applicant were of their own volition to make another minor change application, which is in the same vein that we're looking at today.
Thank you. Got it.
Okay. Councillor Suarez, did you have another question? Yours has been answered. Fine. I'm not missing anybody. No. Good. Well, I think we go back to Councillor Natoli to close on your motion, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, as I mentioned before, 4 of the conditions that the officers have brought before us are as accepted. Amended and an additional condition, I accept no change from what the officers have presented us. Condition 69, if you read 69C, the light surveys are to be submitted to council officers for review and assessment. The proposed amendments provides only for a report confirming the outcomes be provided to council, which limits council's access to baseline data and its ability to review and interpret the survey's details for future reference and compliance, risk and enforceability. Now, the other aspects of 69 was that the baseline for recording the lights, if we accept what the officers have proposed, changes that baseline, can be manipulated if possible. Condition 69 that was previously approved and vetted through every legal process and supported by the previous council makes it very clear. Now, in terms, I believe that it outweighs some of the clarity that the officers have tried. They've obviously tried to build in a lot of the clarity, but there are aspects of 69 that dilute the obligations and dilute the ability for council to be able to understand the baseline data. And I think there is a real risk that we face that if we don't revert back to the original 69, that we possibly, and I believe, seriously dilute the ability to be able to manage that light and have that baseline set. Condition 70, predominantly most of the wording and changes are as is. There's some inclusion. Those inclusions include the balcony doors, that there isn't any power points on the actual balconies, and it talks about the responsibility of the body corporate in being able to make sure that all of the automation, all of the conditions that we've set are compliant. That's all it does. It gives that body corporate the right to be able to go into every unit once a year to make sure that every unit is able to be compliant. And with that, they then have to provide to council a certificate of compliance to make sure that they're actually able to meet the conditions that we've set. And as I've said to you, councillors, this building is not like any other building. It's located in a very sensitive area. And there are no 7-storey buildings on the beach there at Buddina. You know, there's 2-storey houses. The beach profile changes. There's vegetation in some areas that screen some of those 2-storey homes. But those homes are no higher than the 8.5 metres. We're talking about 21 metres. We're talking about, 15 times the number of dwellings than what exists there now. 15 times the number of dwellings. So, it's quite significant. And our obligation is to make sure that, one, is that if we're going to be serious about the conditions that we apply, that they can be met. And the only way that we know that we can do that is by making sure that we take human behaviour out of this, because we know that we can't get 73 owners all behaving the same. But what we can do is ensure that that the automation is centralised and is put in place, that irrespective of human behaviour, automation will just fix that for us. And then making sure that all of that is checked once a year. It's body corporate's responsibility. They are the owners of this building. For the life of the building, that's their responsibility. So, councillors, these conditions may seem tough, but as I said, this building is being placed in an area that I don't believe high-rise buildings deserve to be in this building. It's difficult. And if we're going to make this building work there, then I think we have to introduce conditions which are no more onerous than what I said Bargara is. These conditions apply to the residents in Bargara. So, some of the conditions and things that I've brought back here were wording that were in the previous conditions set. And there's also, they have been confirmed by the judgment in Segasui. So I've just added extra bits. Those wording sets and changes and things in the condition have been left as they are. I've made those additions in 70 that incorporate those fundamental elements of automation and compliance.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. All those in favour of the motion? Councillor Johnston, Councillor Natoli, Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Suarez. Those opposed? Councillor Cox, Landsberg, Jamieson, Law, O'Prey and Dixon. The motion's defeated. I'll go to you, Councillor Cox, as you foreshadowed recommending the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, I will be moving the officer recommendation. I do believe that it is a strengthening position.
Sorry, just before you do, Councillor, I need to get a seconder. Councillor Landsberg, thank you. Carry on, Councillor. My apologies.
Thanks, Councillor Landsberg. Councillors, as I've just said, I do believe this officer recommendation is a strengthening position upon what was previously approved last year. And I certainly understand the positioning that Councillor Natoli's had. However, this is, I think, a good compromise and strengthening position of this particular conditions for the building at Buddina. I know I just wanted to touch on a couple of things that were just mentioned in the close in relation to Buddina. There are buildings that exist over 8.5 metres currently. There are several houses above that based on under previous approvals, and there is also an 11-storey building at the top of Buddina Beach near Point Cartwright. There's 4 buildings there, tallest one 11 storeys, and there is quite dense nesting sites underneath those particular buildings. But we're here to discuss this particular recommendation, and councillors, I strongly urge and encourage you to consider this here today.
Okay. Any other speakers? Councillor Law.
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. I would like to suggest an alternate motion, if I may. before we go to vote on the final officer recommendation. Taking on board my feelings of risk associated with going with Councillor Toley's position, but a determination to do everything that we possibly can to protect the marine species that come ashore, and particularly the turtles that nest at that particular location. So if I might, through you, and if it's appropriate to do so, suggest an alternate motion before we go to the final conditions.
Well, is it an alternate motion that builds on what we've got here, or is it... so it's not an amendment, it's an alternate?
An alternate motion, yes, okay. That would give us an opportunity to have more opportunity to consider the conditions that have been presented by Councillor Natoli, so that they could be fully considered by the officers and professional staff involved in making the decision.
Well, we really need to be able to get something up on the screen for your colleagues.
Yeah, I have something that we may be able to use.
Good.
It's okay. If you want to speak to it, we'll try and capture that.
Yep.
So we really need to get it up on the screen. You can run through the detail, and then we'll call for a seconder, and then the debate can continue.
So really it's about achieving the best possible outcome we can, while also maintaining that we are performing to the best of our ability to operate in the public interest. So the motion that I would like to put forward, councillors, is that Council delegate the power to the Chief Executive Officer to decide application number MCU 18019.01 for a minor...
Sorry, Councillor Law, my apologies for interfering. I'm just taking some advice on our standing orders. We do actually have a live motion, and originally I thought you were seeking to amend that live motion, but we've got a live motion that Councillor Cox has moved and Councillor Landsberg has seconded, and Councillor Cox has spoken to that motion. So I really need to determine that before I consider another alternative motion. So I need to make a ruling about what I'm going to do. You can foreshadow an alternative. Otherwise, I'm going to go back to any other speakers on the live motion, which is Councillor Cox's Councillor Officer recommendation. Okay, thank you. Councillor Suarez. Speaking to this motion.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just wanted to again acknowledge the work that the Planning Department have done in strengthening the conditions from the original ones that are being put forward, and again reiterating that the community groups would have liked some further enhancement of these recommendations and controls, because it is difficult to manage human behaviour. And the reason why the community are so interested in getting this right the first time is because as we had our information sessions, one of the questions we were talking about was the time frame of having these lights turned out. And some of the information that came through was that, yes, turtles do occasionally lay nests on brightly lit beaches, but they account for less than 1% of turtle nesting on the Sunshine Coast. And when they do lay on these brightly lit beaches, they only do that particularly when lights are out of order and or in the shadow of the casuarinas on the beach. So light sensitivity to turtle nesting is very important, and I hope that the conditions that we're putting forward through today will be getting it right.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Landsberg.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, just like to talk as a second for that motion moved by Councillor Cox. My concerns are in terms of allowing these alternatives in terms of Councillor Untitled talking about. Are we setting a precedent for future developments and also ongoing residents along the foreshore of our coastline as well? We know everyone wants to live by the beach and they love the ocean views, and also in terms of if we set a precedent today with obviously looking at that alternative motion, will that affect future developments? Will it affect existing residents along the foreshore if it's proven that their residents are stopping turtles coming ashore at that area as well? So that's my concern for our existing residents. Also, talking about automated doors and automated windows and shutters, safety is a big concern for me as well, in terms of if we were talking about something that had to get out of the building extremely quickly. So that was another concern to me. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Any further speakers? Councillor Natali.
Just a question, Mr Mayor. The 70A talks about all of the bylaws and the community management statements and all the requirements. How are we going to know? Tell me, how are we going to know that the body corporate is actually doing this without them communicating? Are we going to have a meeting with them once a year, or how do we actually know? Can you explain to me how we're going to actually be able to be sure that they are compliant?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the body corporate guidelines does come through Council for a check with the plan ceiling at that time, so that's where Council can review that the specifications of that condition have actually made it into the body corporate rules. There is no obligation for the body corporate to regularly communicate with Council, but the conditions of the approval, there's powers under the Planning Act, as with any conditions of any approval, to enforce those conditions. So if the development were to be in breach or found to be in breach at some point down the track, then Council teams would be able to investigate and audit that.
So the obligation now has been placed back on check and make sure that hopefully they've got it right, rather than asking for a compliance certificate each year.
Through you, Mr Mayor, consistent with how all development approvals, the powers of enforcement, yes.
The other question is, why is it that we took out that condition about lighting being turned off at 8 p.m. that was in the previous approval? Why are we taking that out? Was it specifically asked by the developer that we were to take them out? Was that their request that we take that 8 p.m. lighting condition out of the previous approval?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the condition that is in force and effect, which was as a result of the negotiated decision notice in, I think it was October, was not that the lights were turned off after 8 p.m. So what's being considered today is based on that version of the approval, which was the only version of the approval that is effective. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but I'm a bit confused as to the taking out of 8 p.m. lighting condition.
The original set of conditions that the 8 p.m. Turning off of the lights.
So you're talking about the version of the conditions before the approval took effect, being the version from the April 2019.
Yeah.
I don't have that information to hand. That was a process that occurred after representations were made by the applicant, and then a negotiated decision notice was issued 6 months later. So,
Mr Mayor, I won't harp on this. I don't believe that the conditions that we've got here.
Councillor, you've already spoken.
No, I asked.
No, sorry, you
questions,
have.
yeah.
No, you have. So carry on.
So again, I still don't believe that we have gone to a position where we have confidence that the conditions that we've applied will enable to be able to manage human behaviour. We've gone part of the way, but not all the way. And therefore, without being able to manage and address that, I think we have failed to be able to comprehensively give that certainty. And the question I asked to the lighting specialist was, can she provide certainty? Can she give a guarantee? And she couldn't. And she also specified that if all the lights on the balconies are on during any part during nesting time, it will have an increase in light, the sky glow. So that will happen. With this approval, these changes in conditions, that is a likely scenario. How do we manage that? How do we know that that condition at that particular point is in breach of our conditions? Do our officers have the equipment to go and measure that? I don't believe so. So how does compliance happen if we don't take certainty out in regards to introducing automation? You know, we can't go and measure that light, but the lighting experts said that it will increase that light, but we don't have the compliance to be able to do that. I don't believe we have the technical skills within council or the equipment to be able to measure the Allen light at that time that there may be a breach. So if that's the case, we may find for the life of this project that there will be constant breaches of the conditions and our inability to be able to deal with it because we are not well equipped to do that. So we take the automation out and then we don't have the ability to comply in terms of compliance. That is a real issue. I think there should be an obligation on the body corporate to do annual checks to make sure that, you know, they are meeting their conditions. Look, each individual owner can go and change sets of lights. They can go and, if the blinds are not working, they may fix them, they may not. But how do we know? Officers will only react to complaints. And is that really the way that we should be doing it? Shouldn't we put the obligation on the body corporate, the set of owners here that want to move in and live here or rent, the obligation on them to tell us that they are compliant? I think that should be part of this. And so I fail to see how we can get the desired outcomes that we want. I fail to see it. And I really would hope that the mover at least would accept an amendment that we do include the body corporate obligation to do annual checks and provide a certificate of compliance annually. I think that's the least that we can do. If we leave everything else there, then, but at least put that obligation back onto the body corporate, the set of owners there. And I ask the mover, would he be prepared to accept that? No. Okay.
Councillor Suarez.
Through you, Mr Mayor, if I may ask a question. I acknowledge that the conditions presented by Council are better than the original conditions, but not perfect. However, we have to vote on this item without any understanding of what Councillor Law may be proposing as an alternative. Can I ask him a question as to what his intention would be?
Yeah, I guess if we can keep it to light, tight and bright.
Yep. Councillor Law, can I just ask you what your intention for the alternative would be?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. The intention of what I wanted to propose was to give delegated responsibility back to the acting CEO so that with the advice of the officers and planning staff, the alternatives that have been raised on the floor today could have a brief period of time to be able to have those things considered, to be acted on under the delegated authority of the CEO, and then also achieve the time constraints around the current adjournment of an ongoing court case that we've heard plenty about already. So it's giving everyone the opportunity to consider these alternatives that have been put up today that I feel are too risky for us to make in this space.
Thank you. I see another hand go up there. No. Can I go? Sorry, Councillor Law.
So thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Just and to clarify, thank you for the question, but I was going to just speak against the motion to allow an opportunity for me to put forward that alternate motion should this be defeated, where I would want to give delegated authority back to the acting CEO so that we can make some adjustments to the conditions and achieve the best possible outcome for the marine life, for the endangered turtle species, and to allow better outcomes to happen where there is a conflict between development and protecting the marine life along the foreshore.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to Councillor Cox to close.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just have a question before I close, maybe through to Mr. Rundle. It's my understanding that there's been one nest in the last 3 years within 100 metres of this site. Are you able to confirm whether or not that is accurate, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have the information of nesting.
Okay, no problem. Councillors, look, we've had a lot of debate around this minor change to the development approval, and that's great because it shows democracy in action. However, I've been reading through all the information that's been provided by the community groups, the officers' response. Obviously, we've had an alternate sort of motion put forward today. Taking all that into consideration, I remain comfortable with what the officers have suggested. I see it as being a strengthening of the position that was previously endorsed by Council, and I certainly just encourage you to support this here today, and that allows us to meet any of those critical timeframes that need to be met in relation to this particular item. So I look forward to your support.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Johnston, Cox, Landsberg, Jamieson, O'Prey, Hungerford and Dixon. Those opposed? Councillor Natoli, Babarowski, Law and Suarez. The motion's carried. Councillors, we might pause the meeting there. If you can just remain seated for the moment. Can we... Okay, councillors, we'll resume the meeting. We're up to item 8.3, which is the Kenilworth Community Transport Services Trial End Report. And I invite Rodney Zinn to give us a presentation. Thank you, Rodney.
Are we up?
Thank you, and good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors.
Okay. Thanks, Rodney.
The purpose of this report is to seek Council's endorsement for the continuation of the Kenilworth Community Transport Service, which commenced on the 25th of June 2019 and operated for 9 months prior to being suspended in March 2020 due to the COVID-19 crisis. The report to Council's ordinary meeting on the 19th of July 2018 provided for the service to operate for an initial 12-month trial period and for a further report to Council to review the success of the service. This service is run by dedicated volunteers from the Kenilworth community with administrative support and technical support from Council staff where required. Passengers must live within a 6.5 kilometre radius of the Kenilworth Post Office and are required to register to become members and prior to booking a service. To date, 110 residents within the 6.5 kilometre radius have registered to use the service, with 36 of these utilising the service in the first 9 months. This table shows a summary of trips per month up until the service was suspended in March 2020. The service carried an average of 1.5 persons per trip during that time, with the peak total passengers in August 2019 of 32 passengers. Fares collected to date amount to $1,176 and the subcommittee bank balance is currently $193.94. Passenger fares of $8 per return trip have covered subcommittee's bank fees, fuel costs and incidentals. Council finances the registration, insurance and vehicle changeover costs and any shortfall of other costs up to a maximum of $2,000 should the subcommittee not be in a position to fund these fees. Approximate annual costs to Council to continue the service are $4,200. This table shows... No, it doesn't. Okay, this table shows a cost comparison of Council's FlexiLink services which are funded by Council's transport levy. At $21.30 subsidy per trip, the Kenilworth Community Transport Service runs at a lower cost per trip than Council's FlexiLink services. The service currently utilises a 2014 Kia Sorento 7-seat vehicle which was purchased at the end of the lease in April 2019 for approximately $12,000. It is estimated that the current value of the vehicle is between $11,000 and $13,000. Should Council resolve to continue the service, it is intended to extend the service of the existing vehicle for another 12 months as it is still under warranty. The recommendation is that Council receive and note the report titled Kenilworth Community Transport Services Trial End Report, continue to support the Kenilworth Chamber of Commerce to deliver the volunteer-led community transport service, including the provision of a vehicle, an annual allocation to cover costs if required, pending annual budget approval and service viability, and to request the Chief Executive Officer to provide a report to the future Council meeting addressing potential changes to the service which have been identified by the subcommittee relating to improving the service.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodney. Happy to move. Councillor Law. Seconded, Councillor Babarowski. Thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Law?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much for the report, Rodney. First of all, I'd just like to acknowledge the work done by the previous Council, the Councillor for Division 10, and all of the officers who have worked with the community to get this service up and running and to then support it to achieve the results we've heard about today. But most importantly, it's the volunteers of the Kenilworth community who have given their time and energy to advocate for the service to happen and then to actually deliver on the service over the last 12 months, notwithstanding the short break due to the COVID-19 restrictions. And it's this community who have achieved success and who have proved that the model is in fact a viable, needed and necessary service for the people of Kenilworth. And one of the KPIs for the trial to show that it was successful was to operate within the funding commitments offered by Council and showing the ability for ongoing success. And I believe that we've heard from Rodney's in today and also in the report that we have in front of us that they have indeed demonstrated that success. So my congratulations to the community who have given their time and energy and effort to make this service work. But these volunteers of Kenilworth, the ones who have made it work, have invested their time and gifted their time to the community so that they are able to create a connected and resilient community. And that is really very important. This is not as much about a transport service as a community service. And one of the things of the Sunshine Coast Community Strategy 2019 to 41 is to create and to provide opportunities for communities to be connected and resilient. And this is one service that Council is able to support at a very minimal fee for the benefit of the community out there so that they can achieve on these strategy initiatives. So I would urge all of you, please, to give ongoing support to this service so that the community know and can go forward with certainty that this transport service can continue with our support and that the community volunteers who are gifting their time are able to build their community. And those volunteers will probably become the users of the service in the future when they find themselves in the position that many of the users of the service are currently in today. So thank you for the report. I'm so pleased that they've demonstrated and proved that it works, and I recommend your approval of the ongoing service. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Law. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Really, I just stand to echo what Councillor Law has described as a really outstanding success for a community initiative. I must admit, as Transport Portfolio, when this was first proposed, I was a tad concerned that the structure needed to provide a reasonably certain service would be quite challenging for any community. But they've proved that they have that commitment. So it's absolutely delightful to be standing here today to support the motion and to some extent recognise that item C recognises that we're still in a learning curve. This can be improved, and I look forward to the future report where we consider that feedback from the community and from our transport team to really provide a model which other communities may be able to emulate, but stressing that it is quite unique. But I'd be very pleased to see other communities consider these sorts of initiatives where transport is really so difficult for them. So, councillors, I certainly hope that you'll support the officer recommendation and just conclude again by complimenting the transport team who really did work very hard on to make sure that the operational side of this worked. We've still got a little bit of a challenge perhaps on the changeover costs, which we haven't incurred this time, but I think we're up to it. So, councillors, I hope that you're able to support the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. No further speakers. Councillor Natali.
I just want to commend the officers for the work that they've done, and the community, in particular the volunteers that have made this possible. When I look at the options for residents that live in these small communities that are remote, there is no public transport options, and unfortunately, the council has to come in with the community and find a solution. and that's what's happened here. I noticed that one of the external contractors, groups that weren't included was TransLink, and you would think that they would have an interest in terms of all aspects of public transport. In fact, you would think they'd have their hand in their pocket supporting this type of initiative, because it takes the reliance away from the state government and puts the whole onus on local government and the community to be able to come up with a solution. And you would think that they'd be grateful, because the cost of running this compared to running buses would be extraordinarily low compared to their cost per passenger and per travel distance. So, look, I support it. I think it's great. I think we've got to support our communities remote, find solutions for them, innovative ways that we can support our communities, and I fully support the recommendations, and I urge all councillors to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. No further speakers. Do you like to close, Councillor Law? No need. Put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, busy morning. Under section 175E, brackets 2 of the Local Government Act 2009, I wish to inform you that I may have a personal interest in the matter that is the subject of agenda item 8.4, on the basis that I am the patron of the Sunshine Coast Hockey Association. I'm making this declaration out of an abundance of caution, given the Act is currently unclear in relation to circumstances where a councillor is a patron of a community organisation but not a member. I have formed the view that, given the nature of the personal interest, I believe I can appropriately manage any perceived conflict, should it exist, and that I can impartially make a decision in the best interest on the matter before council today. So I would now ask the Deputy Mayor to assume the chair so that you might deliberate on this matter and make the necessary determinations under section 175E, brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 2009. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jamieson. Councillor, so this is a procedural motion.
Sorry, Councillor.
So, councillors, is there someone prepared to move that Councillor Jamieson does not have or has a real conflict or a perceived conflict of interest in this matter? Councillor Hungerford. So, councillors, we're considering whether he has a perceived conflict. Is there a seconder? Councillor O'Prey. Councillor, it's not an item for debate, but if any questions, so we'll put that. Sorry, my apologies, Councillor.
Thank you, councillors. As I indicated a moment ago, I'm the patron, but not a member, of the Sunshine Coast Hockey Association. The patron's role is honorary and is one that I hold given my position as Mayor of the Council. I derive no financial benefit or reward from holding the position of patron. I'm not a member of the Executive Committee, nor do I play any role in the management or administration of the Association. I have played no role in the assessment of the Association's application, and nor have I advocated to Council staff on this application. The success or otherwise of the Association is in receiving a grant under the Sports Field Maintenance Program will afford no benefit or detriment to me personally. For these reasons, I believe that by participating in the debate and the decision on this matter, I would not be unduly influenced by the fact that I'm patron of the Hockey Association. Furthermore, I have no intention of opposing or seeking to amend the officer's recommendation in this report. On this basis, I believe I have the ability to objectively participate in the consideration of this report and manage any perception of a personal interest should it arise. Councillors, and this is important, I also note the Queensland Government has recognised the need to clarify circumstances where a councillor or mayor is a patron of a community or sporting organisation. To this end, the Parliament has recently passed amendments to the Local Government Act which will come into force 12 October 2020 and which provide that where a councillor is a member or patron of a community group or sporting organisation and is not appointed as an executive officer of the organisation, that circumstance does not constitute a declarable conflict of interest. So, councillors, I'll leave the matter in your hands.
Thank you, Mayor Jamieson. So, councillors, we're now voting that in accordance with S1754A of the Local Government Act 2009, that Councillor Mark Jamieson has a perceived conflict of interest in matters that are to be considered in item 8.4 2020 Sportsfield Maintenance Funding Program. And just to remind you that if it's determined that he does have, we then move on to a vote on whether he can stay or leave. Councillor Law can ask a question, by all means.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. So my question is that I have the understanding that this is yet to be confirmed by the Act and by the government. So are we creating any precedent or any sort of issue here by saying, by us determining whether or not the councillor has a perceived conflict of interest in this matter, are we getting ahead of the legislative process?
It's a good question. I do tend to think that the decision lies with the councillor, but Mr Acting CEO, do you have a point of clarification you can add?
I think what you have at the moment is you have the Act is fairly clear and there is a potential at the moment. There has been some work done in relation to that, and as of the 12th of October, we will get some real clarity which says in this particular case this type of thing would be not considered to be one. So I think at this stage, with the provisions not in place yet, we do need to go through this process.
Happy with that? So, councillors, can I ask you to vote on the motion before you? Those in favour that Councillor Mark Jamieson does have a perceived conflict of interest, please raise your hand. So, Councillor Hungerford, Councillor Prey, Councillor Law. Against? Councillor Winston, Councillor Natoli, Councillor Cox, Councillor Landsberg, Councillor Babarowski, Councillor Suarez, Councillor Christian. The item is lost. Presumably, that means he is now resuming the chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Babarowski. We'll move on to the presentation for item 8.4, and I invite Maggie Katnack and Jack Ray is also here. Thank you, Maggie.
Good morning, Mr Chair and councillors. This report seeks Council's consideration and endorsement of the recommendations of the 2020 Sportsfield Maintenance Funding Program. Presenting with me today is Council's Parks Community Sports Field Officer, Jack Ray. The aim of the program is to provide consistent, equitable and appropriate support for sports field maintenance across the local government area. The program has been operating since the 2011-2012 financial year and provides up to 3 years of funding to sports organisations with primary responsibility for the maintenance of sports fields. All funding agreements ceased at 30th of June, and this round commences a new 3-year cycle of multi-year funding. The funding program is based on a formula which considers the field type, the number of fields and the period of responsibility. Some groups share fields, some cricket, football, in some cases have 6 months each, others have 12 months of responsibility. Pivotal to this program is the availability of Council's Parks Community Sports Officer from Parks and Gardens to support those sporting organisations, providing expert advice on all areas of sports field maintenance. So Jack Ray is with us today, as I mentioned. During 2019-20, a review of the sports field maintenance program was completed. The review included a survey of some funded sporting organisations, an audit of the quality and condition of the funded sports fields, consultation with internal stakeholders to identify any issues, opportunities for the future for the program, and alignment to Council's current strategies and plans and policies. The key findings of the review were that there's a high level of satisfaction with this program. The sports fields funded under the program have turf in good condition, which is of appropriate length, cut evenly, regularly mown and relatively free of pests and diseases. And the program is achieving its aim of providing consistent, equitable and appropriate support for sports field maintenance across the local government area. In line with these findings, the review recommended that the program continue under the current funding model, and as costs of field maintenance supplies and services have increased during that 3-year period of the previous funding cycle, a 5.4% increase is to be applied to the funding model, reflecting the cumulative adjustments to CPI Brisbane over the past 3 years. These recommendations are implemented in the 2020 Sports Field Maintenance Program. So this program opened for applications on the 20th of April and closed on the 27th of May. It was promoted through direct contact with eligible organisations as well as on Council's website. 46 applications were received from sporting organisations. The assessment of applications included clarification of the tenure arrangements, period of tenure, types of sport played on the fields and the number of fields, period of maintenance responsibilities. This information provides the basis on which calculations of funding amounts are made. The panel determined that 3 years of funding was appropriate in all 46 applications. Funding of $734,051 per year for the 46 sporting organisations for the next 3 years is recommended. Of course, this will have some implications for future budgets. So, yes, this report seeks council endorsement of those officer recommendations. Thank you.
Can we have a mover? Councillor Landsberg, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Winston, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Landsberg?
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank, obviously, Council in regards to this allocation for our sporting fields across the Sunshine Coast. I'm sure a lot of us would agree, especially I'm pretty lucky in terms of Caloundra in Division 2 to receive a good benefit of that, which would be the recipients in Division 2 will be the Caloundra Little Athletics, our AFL club, City Soccer Club, the Sharks Junior Rugby League Club, Rugby Union Club, our Cricket Club and the District Rugby League Football Club. Now, obviously the aim of this is to obviously contribute towards our maintenance costs and to provide expert advice for these clubs looking after these fields. Obviously, with the endorsement of it, when it was put back in 2011 on February the 2nd, my birthday actually, if anyone want to know that, but obviously I'd just like to say thanks to Maggie and Jack, and obviously my compliments to the council officers that provide the expert advice to these other groups around the Sunshine Coast. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Any other speakers? Councillor O'Prey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. Maggie, thank you very much for the report. Our sports fields across the entire Sunshine Coast are just magnificent. The grass on our fields as a regional centre is dead set second to none, so well done. Congratulations to you, Jack, and your team as well, mate. Well done. Councillors, this is more than just sports fields. I often talk to this item when it comes up every year, and I talk about the tourism benefits, but what I'd like to talk to you about now is the visiting team benefits. At the moment, we've got 3 major AFL teams on the coast training. We've got an NRL club, and we've got potentially got a heap of netball teams coming to the Sunshine Coast region. Now, that's the major franchises. But what we seem to forget or don't see so much of is that second and third tier level sports clubs and school groups that come to the region for our sports fields. That's why they're here. They're here because of our wonderful sunshine, of course, but secondly because we provide a really good facility and we provide really good fields, and the maintenance in those fields is absolutely critical. So going forward, knowing that the difficulties that the economy's in at the moment, little things like this make an enormous difference. So they're making sure that we've got the best fields in Queensland, if not Australia, and we become the preferred destination for those second and third tier groups to come to the Sunshine Coast to host their carnivals in 2021, 22 and beyond, is absolutely critical in our economic resurgence throughout the Sunshine Coast. So with that, I'd also like to add a huge congratulations to Jack Gray. I give him a plug all the time. Every time I see him, I love him. This guy probably mows and manages and looks after more grass on the Sunshine Coast than anyone else, and does the best job ever. And I've got to tell you, it's an enormous privilege to have him. So Maggie, can we just make sure we keep him? It's critical we keep him. All right, but with that, councillors, I'd really like to see us put this forward today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Apray. Yes, Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd just like to, again, echo what Councillor Landsberg and Councillor Apray said about this vitally important program. It really is, to some extent, a really good illustration of how well we can partner with community groups that essentially rely on a volunteer economy to produce very high standards of service at our sports grounds. But they do need our assistance, and this program is a really excellent, well-targeted one that helps them to feel confident that they can maintain standards in the fields and let them concentrate on fundraising for all sorts of other aspects of their activities. It's a marvellous program, very successful. My compliments again to the team and the staff, but also my compliments to the community groups right now who are struggling with considerable challenges with their revenue flows and their organisational challenges during the COVID period. So again, I think this is a good news item for them to feel confident about the way forward. I like the fact that we're also recognising that there is some provision here to recognise that costs are increasing. I certainly urge all councillors to support the officer recommendation, as I will be.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Law.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much for the work that is done to care and maintain the condition of the sporting clubs. It's very much appreciated, as noted by Councillor O'Prey. And I'd just like to say that too will be wanting to support this program so that it can continue into the future, and just draw our attention back to that link again at such an important time in this particular year, where we want to be giving every opportunity for healthy, active communities. And again, this is a very powerful link back to our community strategy, where we give people the opportunity to, when we're allowed to participate in sports once again. So it will be important that we're able to continue the maintenance program so that all of the sporting facilities achieve the standards that they're currently at, so that they're ready for use when we're able to use them again. So I offer my support and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Law. No further speakers. I'll go to Councillor Landsberg to close. Not necessary. Let's put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Well done. Thank you, Maggie and Jack. Thanks, councillors. Item 8.5 is the Feral Animal Prevention and Control Program. I invite Jason to give us a presentation. Thank you, Jason.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm here today to present to you with Tony Cathcart, my team leader, the Feral Animal Prevention and Control Program. This is a requirement under the Biosecurity Act 2014. It's the fifth time I've presented this report to Council. It's been a requirement since the 1st of July 2015, and it aligns with the Sunshine Coast Council Local Government Area Biosecurity Plan 2017 that this council endorsed back 3 years ago through extensive consultation with our community, our agricultural industries, a number of peak bodies, state government agencies and many other stakeholders. So why is the program needed? Although this gives us several powers under the Act, 99% of the time we don't need these powers because we are invited onto properties by landholders. We undertake a lot of community education and provision of information. We do respond to around 550 new requests for service a year, and we have around 200 to 250 continuing relationships with landholders where there are ongoing issues on their properties. However, it does give us powers if we need to undertake enforcement powers such as seizure of rabbits and that sort of thing. So just on that, some of the key points of the Act are to protect public health, social amenity, economic impacts and also our environment. As I said before, we have, through the Environment Levy, through council support in recent years, which has been really fantastic, we've had money there to provide action and engagement, and it's been about providing partnerships with community groups, setting up community-led wild dog baiting programs and those sorts of things. We have information days that we run, a number of monitoring programs, research partnerships with institutions that I've provided information for in the last week, and most importantly, the control programs, which includes destruction. So some of the positives of the support Council has given us to date are protecting of some really quite endangered species, that some of them are only found on the Sunshine Coast. The brush-tailed phascogale, the Mary River turtle, the spotted-tailed quoll, which we've just recently rediscovered, and we're providing, as I said, a lot of support to agricultural enterprises. Now, there's 6 feral animals that we pretty much spend most of our time on, and that is the feral deer, the feral pig, feral cat, wild dog, and the Indian miner bird. And also, I cannot forget the fox. So some of the achievements, it's hard to read there, but on the top left-hand corner, we've got small macropods, which are little small cute and furries. The blue line is in areas where we've undertaken treatment programs. We've got significant increases in those numbers of animals in those areas compared to untreated areas where the numbers are very small. On the right-hand top corner there, we have fox numbers. The blue lines are where we've undertaken fox control in those areas. An example of that is the Coastal Fox program that's been running up in the Coolum and North Shore area now for around 6 years. And down the bottom there, we've just got total of species controlled across the last 5 years. So there are peaks and troughs in that, and that is due to a range of factors such as drought, availability of food and other pressures that occur. So thank you. That's the spotted-tailed quoll there as an ending.
Great finish. Thank you, Jason. Someone happy to move? Councillor Suarez, thank you. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Would you like to open, Councillor Suarez?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I was really pleased to have the presentation on this program the other day, and through doing a bit of research, something that's not new to the old council, but maybe new to some of the new councillors, is that the Feral Animal Education and Control Team received the Queensland Pest Animal Team Award for Excellence in 2019 in recognition of achieving exceptional results. And this has been attributed partly to the use of technology and innovative approaches to feral animal control and monitoring. And as we saw on the last slide, the spotted-tailed quoll was a very significant find for the region. It's a vulnerable species within Queensland and hasn't been seen on the Sunshine Coast. The last known sighting was around 2004. The key to the success of this program is not only working within council areas, but also working in hand with the landowners. So not only do feral animals damage native animal populations, they also damage crops, attack livestock and pets, damage trees, disperse weed seeds and spread disease. So this is a great initiative where council is meeting its general biosecurity obligations and also working in partnership with private landholders for higher effectiveness across our region to ensure high-risk native species are protected. Well done to your team.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. No further speakers? Need to close, Councillor?
I'd just like to I'd like to thank Jason Brewer and Anthony Cathcart and the rest of the team for the unrelenting work that they do, and I fully endorse the continuation of this program. That it is through these prevention and control programs that the Sunshine Coast is making useful contributions to protect Australia's native animals.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. And you're up for the next report as well, which is 8.6 is the surveillance program and the Biosecurity Act of 2014.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So I've got with me to the side there Mark Call, who's the team leader for that program, and we'd like to present to you the surveillance program. And this is a bit of a different program. It has been running for many years with council under various different pieces of legislation, but again has been called up now under the Biosecurity Act 2014. As I said before, still under the Local Government Biosecurity Plan 2017. It does give us powers again to undertake all sorts of things, compliance actions and enforcement. However, we have again been working through the Environment Levy funding with education and information. Some of the support programs that we've had funded through the levy for free weed hire equipment have really assisted us in helping landholders meet their obligations. And we all have general biosecurity obligations under the Act, not just landholders. So that has been part of that. The key target species are listed in the Local Government Biosecurity Plan. There's 229 locally significant invasive plants in there, and that was through the consultation with a whole heap of stakeholders, state government agencies again, as I said, previous to the previous report. And there are 58 restricted species that have been declared by the state government, so we monitor for them as well. And we also have arrangements in place with Biosecurity Queensland where we report on those things. So with this program, with our resources, rather than just go around willy-nilly, we try and do a systematic approach where we will go through an area, and the way the biosecurity plan's written is the 5 catchment areas. We've commenced up in the top of those catchments. There is Pacific Paradise listed, which isn't at the top of the catchments, and that's for a specific reason. We have larger than what we'd like infestations of groundsel there, so we'd like to take hold of that issue. You'll see there 4,000 square metres. We're focusing on the bigger blocks. You could spend a lot of time doing smaller blocks, but we're trying to get to those bigger blocks. So that's just demonstrating our approach. We don't just turn up. We would have the powers under this program just to turn up on people's properties if the gates weren't locked, but the idea is we send notification, written notification a couple of weeks before. Property owners in general arrange a time to meet on site, and we go around the property with the property owner. They're proud to show us their properties. And through the Environment Levy, you see on the top right-hand corner there, that's a wick wiper. We have a whole range of spray backpacks and different devices that we can loan out free of charge, and that's been taken up, with a lot of people moving from interstate, or, they don't have a real eye for weeds. That can be a great assistance to them. So our data across the last 12 months, 54% of properties have had a invasive plant issue on the property, and that's largely because we've got so many locally significant species that we've got on that list. If we were just going off the state list, that number would be a lot less. So with that, with the education and assistance that we provide, by the time we deal with those issues with the landholder, it results in a 12% compliance notice issue, which we call a biosecurity order. So that's a formal order placed upon the landholder or the person responsible for the risk. And out of that, to date this year, we've had 1 enter and clear on a property, and we have 2 currently in the processes that may be entered and cleared. So we have around about greater than 99% compliance rate with our work with the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. Someone move, please. Councillor Cox. Seconder, Councillor Johnston. Thank you. I'd like to open. Councillor Cox.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, This report, as was the previous one on feral animals, put before Council every year as per the requirement under the Biosecurity Act. Essentially, this is business as usual and is something all councils in Queensland have to do as required by the state government. As we've just heard, the surveillance program targets specific pest plants listed in the Biosecurity Act, such as the groundsel, bush, the rat's tail, grasses, fireweed, etc. One of the benefits of this program is also that we offer the landholders access to free weed control equipment to assist them in complying, in preventing, minimising the biosecurity risk. So, councillors, obviously a lot of work's been put into this by Mr Brewer, Mr Call and their respective teams, so I'd certainly like you to support this here today.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you to the officers for the work that they do and for this very good report. I'd like to say we're doing enough in the areas of weed control and invasive weeds, but unfortunately with the budget that we've got, that's about all you can do. There are many other invasive weeds which we are not dealing with, and I'll be working in the next 3 years to try and expand the number of species. And I think it's not generally understood by many of my fellow councillors what a problem invasive weeds are on the Blackall Range and down in the Conondales. You know, there's just a huge explosion of all different types of weeds, from broadleaf to narrowleaf privets, the Chinese privet. Unfortunately, that is also a significant health problem to a lot of asthmatics. The Chinese elm, or Chinese celtis, as some people call it. I'm disappointed that we haven't changed our monitoring situation to include that one, because it's at its infancy to a degree in certain areas, but it just grows so rapidly in those high rainfall, rich soil environments. And one only has to go to the Gympie area and see the invasion all along the Mary River of narrowleaf, Chinese celtis. And the little seed, there's one seed on every leaf, and the birds love them and they spread them. And then we have African devil's fig, which is really, 5 years ago you didn't see an African devil's fig in the hinterland. Now they're everywhere. And there are others, such as convolvulus or morning glory, which is really quite out of control and very difficult to control. So, you know, there's a lot of those weeds we have to get stuck into and clean up. I understand it costs money, but the reality of the situation is we are infesting properties between council and main roads, but main roads in particular. The weeds growing on their land is infesting farms. It is causing those farmers a lot of effort and work and expense to control the weeds. You can't eliminate them as long as you've got the weeds growing in those areas. And what many people don't understand, farmers do, but what many of the public don't understand is that 1 year's seed is 7 years weeds, and in some cases it's 10 years weeds, because the seed stays in the soil for that length of time. So it's a matter of, you know, this problem is growing exponentially. And I know that you fellows understand that, and it's a shame that we haven't given more attention as a council to trying to control the situation to a manageable level, because, you know, if every year the problem gets, say, 50% greater or 100% greater, eventually the hinterland is just going to be covered in weeds because of the rainfall and of the high quality of the soils up there. We get weeds that don't grow on the coast or are very easily controlled on the coast because they're visible. But we often have situations where they're not as visible and they just invade everywhere. So I look forward to us developing this program further in the years to come, and thank the officers for their efforts.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. I'll go to Councillor Babarowski.
Councillors, I'd just like to rise to some extent to reinforce what Councillor Johnston was talking about in terms of the hinterland. But I think Councillor Johnston did hint that he recognises, as I think we all do, that we can't do this alone.
Yep.
Essentially, we can do all we can on council-controlled land or road reserves, but if we're not partnering with the private landholders or the state or federal government agencies to do their part, essentially we can't win it. And it's been, I think, a constant frustration of this council that as much of the resources as we put into it, if it's not matched or if it's not complemented by concurrent programs in the private sector or in the agencies on the state and federal government, we're just not going to win this. We can contain it as much as we possibly can. So I'd just like to again recognise that as a council I think we do design our programs very well, and the report demonstrates how well we do partner with a lot of the private landholders and indeed QPWS and so on. But I guess it's a signal to us that at some point, as Councillor Winston said, we're going to have to perhaps redouble our efforts and really form to some extent maybe a task force or something that has some formal structure to it, which can last a number of years, recognising that you've, in the additional information, reported on, the structures of the meetings we have, but we're going to have to ramp that up at some point if we're to really control what is a very, very complex ecology that essentially is a little bit out of control. I'm not suggesting that I think it's exactly out of control now, but certainly on some species we've been talking about how we can get on top of it for many, many years. So, councillors, I just reinforce what Councillor Winston said and Councillor Cox and some others that we are on a good pathway, but we need to look to do more when we're in a position to do so. But I certainly support the officer recommendation at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. I'm going to go to Councillor Cox to close.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It's always great to have the input of a couple of hinterland councillors because they've just highlighted the challenges that council faces in this particular area. One thing I just wanted to just finally say was the program has been very well received by our community and over time has enabled thousands of site inspections and complaint investigations to be conducted. Importantly, our council has a strong emphasis on community education and engagement and working with our community to get the best results. They can be improved, but we've done a very good job to date, and I certainly look forward to working with the couple of hinterland councillors to try and maybe rejuvenate this program over the coming years. And thanks again to the team.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Just before I put the motion to the vote, thank you, Jason and Tony and Mark, for a great job. Well done. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors, and thank you to our staff.
Thank you.
Move to item 8.7, and these next three items, 8.7, 8.8, 8.9. There are no presentations, but our officers are here to answer questions. The first of those is an exception for an electrical easement. And Alex, Councillor Joe, happy to move. 8.7. Got a seconder? Councillor Winston, thank you. Any questions for Alex? Okay. Would you like to open, close, or all at once, Joe?
It's very simple, Mr Mayor. Energex needs this transformer to be placed there. We own the land. We are basically using this aspect of the Act to be able to divert directly to be able to sell this land to a government agency, Energex. So it's just straightforward. Hopefully the councillors will support the recommendation.
Thank you. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Alex. Item 8.8, invite Nick Woodbridge forward. It's a exception for a water and sewerage easement. Again, here for any questions councillors might have. Someone happy to move? Councillor Suarez, thank you. Seconder, please. Councillor Johnston, thank you. Questions for Nick? No. Like to close, councillor? Not necessary. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Nick. You've got one more in 8.9, which is an exception for a telecommunications lease. Again, can I have a mover? Councillor Johnston. And a seconder? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Any questions of Nick? Councillor Dixon.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the officers. In regards to this new lease, I understand it'll go from the 1st of October to the 30th of April 2025. I know in the report that you've mentioned that Telstra have no intention to move or roll out a 5G network in Maleny. Whilst Telstra is saying that to us, have we got any assurances from Telstra that they will not move to 5G? And if they do look to move to 5G within the lease period, that council will not extend that lease and will cancel it immediately?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Dixon, we have in writing from Telstra that they have no intention to install 5G technology on the telco tower at 5 Palm Street, Maleny. Unfortunately, under the Telecommunications Act, 1997 Schedule 3, Telstra does have the ability to come in and install technology onto that tower without the landowner's agreement. We are hoping to enter into a lease agreement until 2025, but we don't have any plans after 2025 at this stage.
Mr Mayor, there is a possibility, I'm speaking, that 5G could be rolled out at this location. As the officers have explained, whilst there is a lease there that would be up until 2025, under the Telecommunications Act and federal legislation, as I'm aware, 5G could roll out to Maleny without any council approval. Given that is the case and that this is our land and that we do have some control over our land, I won't be supporting this proposal today.
Thank you, councillor. Any other speakers? Yes, Councillor Johnston.
Mr Mayor, this is a renewal of an existing lease, I believe, and in view of advice that's been provided to council previously by Justin Law from Telstra, that they won't be rolling out 5G anytime before 2025, I feel comfortable in letting this go through to the keeper at the present moment. However, what I do say is you can be assured that if they do try to put 5G in this location in Maleny, there will be an incredible backlash from the community up there. They monitor these sort of things very closely, and I feel comfortable that they won't do it without within the term of this lease, without there being a significant backlash from the community.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. No further speakers. I'll take that as your close, Councillor Johnston.
Yes, thanks.
We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Hungerford, Apres, Suarez, Law, Jamieson, Babarowski, Landsberg, Cox, Natoli, Johnston, and those opposed, Councillor Dixon. The motion's carried. Thank you, Nick. We move to item 8.10, which is the June 20 Interim Financial Performance Report. We've got a PowerPoint from Isaac Pickerskill. Thank you, Isaac.
Good afternoon, Mr Mayor, councillors and council executive staff. Today I'm here to present the Financial Performance Report for June 2020. Councillors, it's important to note this financial report for June reflects the interim results for the 2019 financial year. We're currently working through the final accounts for 2019-20 and preparing for the annual audit process, which will begin shortly. Council, at the end of June 2020, the operating result of $7 million is favourable to budget by $6.4 million. The favourable variance consists of revenue above budget of $10.4 million as well as expenses above budget of 3.9. Variance to budget for revenue are largely attributed to the early payment of Council's federal assistance grant of $6 million. This payment was received in advance of the 2021 financial year from the federal government as a response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Also contributing to the higher revenue is the early opening of Council's holiday parks, which has generated an additional $1.5 million of revenue above the most recently reduced budget. Operational expenditure above budget, largely due to the treatment of depreciation for the financial year, which was increased due to the discovered assets from the implementation of Council's asset management system, as well as a review of the useful lives of the road network. Council's capital works program has achieved 92% of budget, with a total expenditure of $328 million for the financial year. 100% completion has been achieved on various asset programs, including coast and canals, holiday parks, parks and gardens, including the sport and rec program, waste services, road reseal and reheal program, as well as a bus stop installation and renewals. Our Council's benchmark is to achieve 90% completion for each financial year. Therefore, it's a good result considering the disruption experienced over the last few months. The recommendation today is that Council receive and note the report titled June 2020 Interim Financial Report.
Thanks very much, Isaac. Happy to move. Councillor Hungerford. Seconded, Councillor Natali. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Through you, Mr Mayor. It's pleasing to see another solid result. As of June 2020, 327 or 328 million of Council's 355 million for our 1920 Capital Works program has been financially expended. The core capital program has progressed to 91.7% of budget, which is an excellent result, an actual spend of 160 million. Council has a closing cash balance of 197.6 million as of the 30th of June. Now, operating result shows a favourable variance of 3.4 million compared to the budget position. On the operating revenue, year-to-date the revenue as of the 30th of June is 457.4 million, is higher than the expected budget profile by 10.4 million. So don't get excited. That is made up of 6 million from the part of the federal government's bringing forward of the grant funds as a response to COVID-19 economic crisis, and the remaining will come later in the year, so that should bring forward. And the other one to affect that figure is the following program updates provided in relation to the programs reporting lower expenditure to date. These are made up of aerodromes. The replacement of the runway lighting will be completed in the 2021 year. Fleet. There are currently 3 large fleet items on order which have been delayed due to COVID-19, so that expense is yet to come. Quarries. The quarry business had expected to replace the several components of the asphalt plant in 1920. Due to closure of the plant, these replacements are no longer required. And strategic land acquisitions to transport corridors are still under negotiation, so some of that expenditure has not been expended yet. The other one that has positives on the budget, also a revenue from certificates from the solar farm. We've generated more electricity than expended, so that's been a bonus for us as well. Now, the other one that's affecting our budget is the final depreciation expense for the year is calculated in June following completion of the asset write-on process. This has resulted in a variation of 4 million above budget, largely due to discovered assets. They have to come onto our maintenance and depreciation program, so that's the other negative there. So, Mr Mayor, I put this to you. Very solid result again. What I'm looking forward to is the budget review one in September, so we can get an accurate view on what the effects of COVID-19 have been on the 1920 budget and start to get a preliminary on what that's doing for 2021. The only other one that I saw a positive one was with COVID, coming out of COVID, with the relaxation of people being able to travel again, the social distancing regulation has allowed Council's holiday parks to open earlier than anticipated. This has resulted additional revenue over the reduced budget of 1.5 million. We hope that can continue, but with things at the moment, that's not certain, and we certainly hope we do come out of it. Very solid result at the moment. Budget review one is going to be very important to get a view on where we've been and where we're heading in the current year, and we certainly hope that We do get further relaxations from COVID, but with what's happening in the southern areas of Australia, that is very doubtful at the moment. So, Mr Mayor, I put this to you, a solid position to be in, but we've got to remain focused, and I put it to you that this is a very solid result.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Any further speakers? You don't need to close, Councillor. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, item 811. Under section 175C, brackets 2 of the Local Government Act 2009, I wish to inform you I may have a personal interest in the matter that is a subject of agenda item 8.11 on the basis the significant contracting plan for waste collection services identifies local buy as an alternative arrangement through which waste service contract could be procured. Local buy is owned by the Local Government Association of Queensland, of which I'm a director and president, while the significant contracting plan provides a basis for not using local buy. Given the size and complexity of the waste services contract that would be entered into by council, it is arguable that local buy may stand to suffer a loss, either directly or indirectly, depending on the outcome of council's consideration of this matter. On this basis, I will leave the chamber and not participate in the deliberation and vote on this matter, and ask Councillor Babarowski, the Deputy Mayor, to step up.
Councillors, I'll just check before we go on to item 1.11. Are there any other declarations? No. In that case, just remind you that this is the presentation can commence, but it's just for questions and answers. Over to our presenter. Let me just grab that.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. The strategic contracting procedures that Council operates under those procedures, we're obliged to prepare a contracting plan annually. One of the specific inclusions of that contracting plan is to identify any significant contracts that Council wishes to enter into for the financial year and prepare and adopt significant contracting plans for each of those significant contracts. That's all included in the report tabled to Council today. The Appendix A is the contracting plan, and it complies with the local government regulations, and the Appendices B to F are the significant contracting plans, which also apply with the local government regulations. I'm here for any questions for you.
Thank you for your presentation, Dimitri. Councillors, can I have a mover? Councillor Suarez, a seconder. Councillor Winston. Councillors, do we have any questions for the officer? No? In that case, I'll put the officer recommendation as a motion. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Thank you. I understand that we're now going to recall the Mayor, and then there's potential for us to have some lunch. So, councillors, just recall the Mayor to the chair.
Yep. Okay, councillors, we're going to break now because we agreed earlier that after item 8.11 we would deal with item 8.1. So I think it's appropriate we take a break now for lunch and take an hour, and that will give you an opportunity, anyone who needs to take any more advice on the conflict issue. But what I would like to do before we close and break for lunch, we have a piece of art with us today, and it's a piece of art that's in the First Nations we're celebrating the First Nations through an exhibition of artworks which reflect the past, present and future of the oldest continuing culture in the world. Drawn from the Sunshine Coast Art Collection, these works tell the stories of country, both connection to and removal from. For the first time in our gallery's 20-year history, these local and national artworks will be exhibited together to celebrate and remember. Several works were acquired through Sunshine Coast Council's Reconciliation Action Plan and through the Australian Government's Cultural Gifts Program. This particular piece of art is by Lyndon Davis, known well to us all, and is titled The Law of the Land. And as I said, that art is at the gallery between July 18 and August 2, and I'd recommend everybody go and have a look. So with those few words, we'll break for lunch and return at 1:40. Thank you.